Sometimes the biggest threats don't come from the outside, they come from the people closest to you. This gripping story reveals how intelligence, resilience, and clarity can turn the tables on even the most devastating betrayal. When everything is taken away, one woman refuses to break and instead prepares to expose the truth.
My morning started with the sound of my front door breaking open at 6:47. An officer shouted, "Show me your hands!" while two guns were aimed at my chest. I was arrested for attempted murder, a lie designed to ruin my life. Miles away, my family was probably celebrating. They thought their 90-day plan had worked, sending me to prison for a crime my sister did. The handcuffs felt cold and tight on my wrists, but they missed one tiny crucial detail. That one oversight was about to unravel their entire scheme. I am glad you are here for this. Let me ask you something. Where are you from? And what would you do if your own sister framed you? Would you be hurt, furious, or just empty? Tell me in the comments. Please remember, this story is fictional. Any resemblance to real people or places is a coincidence, but the lesson about toxic families is very real. Let's begin. Officer Stevens never bothered to knock. Three heavy bangs shook my apartment door at exactly 6:47 a.m. That was not a delivery. It was someone who did not need an invitation to enter. I was pouring coffee when my world fell apart. The coffee pot was frozen in my hand. Outside my window, the rainy street was still dark. The Austin skyline was a gray outline in the mist. It was the Austin police. My hand shook, spilling hot coffee all over the counter. I carefully put the pot down. My heart started hammering in my chest. I was only wearing an old University of Texas shirt and pajama bottoms. My bare feet made no sound on the wood floor as I walked to the door. I barely had time to shout, "I am coming." The moment I touched the knob, the door flew open. Three officers charged into my apartment. Two Glock 22 pistols were pointed right at me. "Hands where I can see them!" I shot my hands up, palms out. The lead officer was young, maybe 30, with a sharp military haircut and a hard face. His name tag said Stevens. Behind him, his partners checked the room. Their guns were ready for a fight. "Are you Reagan Sutton?" Stevens's voice was like ice. "Yes, what is going on?" "You are under arrest for attempted murder." The words made no sense. Attempted murder. It felt like he was speaking another language. I was trapped in a terrible dream. "What? That is crazy!" I did not. "Turn around, put your hands behind your back." Stevens gave me no time to think. He grabbed my arm, pushed me against the counter, and forced my arms behind me. The cold metal dug into my skin. The handcuffs clicked shut loudly. The sound echoed in my small apartment. "You have the right to remain silent," Stevens said. I could feel his breath on my neck. "Anything you say can be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney." "If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be appointed for you. Do you understand these rights?" "Yes, but this is a mistake. What murder attempt? I was home all night." "You can tell your story to the detective." He yanked my arm and pulled me toward the open door. My neighbors were peering out of their apartments. Mrs. Miller from 4B had her hand covering her mouth. Marcus from across the hall was recording me with his phone. It was a horrible public shaming. I was already being judged before any charge was made. Stevens led me down the hall, past the broken elevator, and into the emergency stairwell. My bare feet felt the cold, dusty concrete as we went down 3 flights. I made myself notice everything. I focused on Stevens's tight grip on my arm. I saw the flashing red light on his partner's body camera. I noticed how they looked at me like I was a monster. That thought sent a cold chill through me. We came out into the building's parking garage. A police car was waiting, its engine running in the damp air. Stevens opened the back door. A thick wire screen separated the front and back seats. He pushed my head down as I got in. The door shut with a heavy final sound. I was locked in a police car. The hard plastic seat was awful. The cuffs were digging into my skin and my shoulders were already aching. Through the screen, I saw Stevens talking into his radio. "We have the suspect. We are on our way to central booking." A suspect, that is what I was now. I closed my eyes and tried to breathe slowly. Attempted murder. Who? When did it happen? And where? I had been at my apartment the entire night. I had a video call at 10 p.m. with clients in Singapore. After the call, I watched a movie on Netflix. I think I fell asleep on the couch. I woke up at about 6:30 and made coffee. There was no missing time, no gaps in my memory. This meant one of two things. The police had made a huge mistake or someone had framed me. Stevens started the car. The other two officers followed in their own vehicle. I saw the garage door open to a gray morning. The city of Austin was just waking up. A couple of people were jogging by the river. A breakfast taco stand was just opening. A man was out walking his dog. The world outside seemed completely normal. But inside this car, my life was being destroyed. We turned onto Cesar Chavez Street and headed toward downtown. I saw my apartment building shrink in the side mirror. All of my proof was still in there. My computer, my phone, and the files that could clear my name were all in that apartment. They did not even let me grab my purse. My mind was spinning. You do not get arrested for a crime like this without a victim. Someone was hurt, and the police were sure I was the one who did it. As I watched the skyline, one clear thought cut through my panic. Whoever did this made a big mistake. They thought I was weak. They were about to find out how wrong they were. These people have no idea who they have arrested. They don't understand my line of work. My career is in cybersecurity, and I am paid to solve impossible problems. I find the weak spots in the most secure digital fortresses. I can follow electronic trails that everyone else thinks are long gone, and I will uncover who is trying to ruin my life. Our car moved onto Interstate 35, where the morning traffic was already thick. The police radio chatted with codes and phrases that were foreign to me. I caught my reflection in the side window. My hair was a wreck. I had on an old college shirt, and the handcuffs shined in the light. I looked every bit the criminal they imagined me to be, but I am not a criminal. I went through the timeline again. Last night I had a 9 o'clock video call. I have recorded files and digital logs to prove it. My clients over in Singapore can back up my story. At 10 o'clock, I put on a movie. I dozed off. I woke up at 6:30. My alibi was perfect, so why was I sitting in the back of this police car? The answer hit me like a physical blow. Someone arranged for me to be in this exact position. This was a setup. Someone knew precisely how to frame me. The only questions left were who did this and what was their reason. Officer Stevens left the highway and drove toward the downtown area. I could see the Travis County Courthouse out the window. Just past it was the police headquarters. It was a blocky concrete structure that looked like a product of the 1970s. It was a cold, impersonal building where people's lives were filed away like documents. My stomach tightened into a painful knot. This was not a nightmare. This was real. In about 15 minutes, I would be booked, fingerprinted, and have my picture taken. I would become just another number in their system. But I would not let myself panic. Panic never solves anything. I had to keep a clear head. I was going to need every ounce of my skill. I would prove to them that I was framed. Because that is exactly what happened. It was a setup so flawless that the Austin police stormed my house with guns drawn, positive they had their person. Someone very clever was behind this. It had to be a person who knew me, my daily schedule, my habits, my entire life. That thought sent a wave of cold dread through my body. Stevens drove into the underground parking garage of the station. The harsh fluorescent lights above us flickered. He parked the car and killed the engine. The silence that followed felt heavy and thick. This was actually happening. He opened my door and helped me climb out. His grip was much gentler now, nothing like his roughness from earlier. I stood on the cold concrete floor in my bare feet and pajamas, hands cuffed behind me, while he radioed our arrival. The detective will see you in about an hour, Stevens said, his voice now much softer. But we have to get you processed first. I could only nod my head. I did not dare to speak. As he led me toward the station's big steel doors, I made a promise to myself. I will discover who did this. I will clear my name, and I will make the person who framed me wish they had never been born. I couldn't know it at that moment, but the person who set me up was someone I had spent my childhood trying to protect. The 15-minute ride to the station felt like it took hours. My wrists were already turning a dark purple from the handcuffs. Each bump on Cesar Chavez Street made the handcuffs dig deeper into my skin. I tried to adjust my position on the hard plastic seat, but it was useless. Through the metal screen, I watched Austin wake up. People were buying breakfast tacos or going for a run, starting their normal day. A little while ago, that was me. The police radio suddenly crackled to life. Unit 47, the victim is in stable condition at Del Seaton. Her husband, a detective from Major Crimes, is with her now. My heart sank. The victim's husband was a police officer. In his rearview mirror, Officer Stevens locked his eyes on mine. You catch that? A detective's wife and child. He let the information sink in. You picked the absolute worst family to target. I didn't do anything, I whispered, but he wasn't paying attention. We arrived at the station on 8th Street, a building of concrete and steel. Inside the garage, the overhead lights made a loud buzzing sound. Stevens led me through a heavy door and down a hallway that smelled of strong cleaning fluid. The booking area was large and cold. A woman who looked to be in her 50s, Martinez, sat at a high desk. She didn't bother to look up. Name? She asked in a bored tone. Reagan Sutton, Stevens replied for me. She typed on her keyboard with one finger. Date of birth? Stevens recited my private details, turning me into a file. The charges are attempted murder, assault, leaving the scene of an accident, and child endangerment. Martinez finally raised her head and stared at me with pure disgust. Endangering a child? A 7-year-old? She asked. Come on, let's get your fingerprints. An officer pressed my fingers down onto a cold glass plate. Then a camera flashed as I stood against a plain white wall for my mugshot. I had to hold a sign with my name and a very long number. They had already emptied my pockets. All I had left were my pajamas. Put her in holding cell 3, Martinez told Stevens. We walked down a long hall lined with cells. I saw a man sleeping in one of them. I heard the sound of a woman crying nearby. The air was heavy with the smell of sweat and desperation. Cell 3 was just a concrete box. Stevens took off my handcuffs and gestured for me to go inside. The detective will come down to talk to you soon, he told me. The massive steel door slammed shut and the noise bounced off the empty walls. I sat down on a freezing metal bench. The small room felt like it was closing in on me. It was maybe 8 feet by 10 feet with no windows. A single light buzzed above me. Jennifer Pfizer. The name from the police report was stuck in my head. It seemed oddly familiar. I searched my memory for anyone I knew with that name, but I came up blank. I did not know a Jennifer Pfizer. And then a horrible feeling washed over me. I remembered Detective Robert Pfizer from the Major Crimes Unit. His name was in the news a while back for a big case. The victim was his wife, and their young child had been with her. A wave of pure terror swept through me. If the victim was a detective's wife, the entire Austin Police Department would want me to be guilty. My alibi would mean nothing. Cops look out for each other, and I was their new enemy. I had to push the fear away and think clearly. At 9 o'clock last night, I was on a video call with my team in Singapore. Marcus Taylor and Patricia Reed were both present. The whole conference was recorded with both audio and video, all time stamped. It was the strongest possible proof of my innocence. So why was I in a jail cell? I heard the sound of footsteps coming toward my cell. A detective wearing a blazer stood outside the bars. She looked to be in her 40s with tired eyes. Miss Sutton, she said, your bail has been paid. I just looked at her, completely confused. What are you talking about? Your father's attorney, a Mr. Gregory Palmer, is here for you. The bond was $500,000. 500,000, and my father paid it? The news was absolutely stunning. I had not even been allowed one phone call. I was arrested only an hour ago. How could he possibly have known? I never called him, I told her. She just shrugged. He called the station himself. He said he was informed about the situation. She opened the cell door. You are free to go. Your court date is set for Friday. But who could have told him about this? I asked her again. I really do not know. Maybe a neighbor. She walked me down the hall. Mr. Palmer is in this room. A neighbor would call my father at 7 in the morning, and my dad, who I had not talked to in months, would hire the best lawyer in Austin and pay $500,000. The detective showed me into a small room. A man in a very expensive suit stood up. Miss Sutton, he said with a calm voice, I'm Gregory Palmer. Your father hired me. I looked straight at him. How did my father know I was in jail? Mr. Palmer gave me a smile that did not seem real at all. I suppose bad news travels quickly. This whole case is about a detective's family. I was arrested at 7 this morning, and the news had not even broken yet. Your father has powerful friends, the lawyer said. Let's focus on getting you home. But I had to know. How did he find out so fast? Mr. Palmer's tone became grim. You have 4 felony charges against you. The state wants to put you away for a long time. We must focus on your defense, not your father's secrets. My phone vibrated on the cold table. The screen showed 47 missed calls. My father, Wallace, had texted demanding I come over. My mother, Margaret, sent a message that made no sense. It said, Paige is hysterical. You must come home. I stared at her words. My sister Paige was hysterical. How could she even know? I had not told a single soul about my arrest. Miss Sutton, Palmer said, watching my face. I am going to my apartment, I announced. I need my computer to figure this out. Your father insists on a family meeting at his house. I will go tonight, but I have to get my things from my apartment first. Palmer clearly disliked my response. Your father was very clear about his instructions. I did not back down, and I am being very clear about going home first. I stood up. Thank you for handling the bail. I will be in touch. I left before he could protest. The Austin sun was blinding after the darkness of the jail. It was a warm September day. I was out of a cell, but I was far from free. I felt a deep dread spreading inside me, a certainty that this was all terribly wrong. Somehow, my father learned of my arrest immediately. My mother's text claimed my sister Paige was a wreck, but that was impossible. I quickly opened my home security app. I needed to see the footage from last night. I had to know what happened while I slept. The app loaded and a chill went down my spine. Someone logged into my system at 3:14 in the morning. The location of the login was an address I knew all too well. It was in Westlake Hills where my parents live. Gregory Palmer was exactly the lawyer my father would hire. He had an expensive suit and cold, emotionless eyes. The air conditioning in the tiny room was blasting. I was cold in my thin pajamas, the bruises on my wrists aching. Palmer seemed like a corporate shark, a man who smelled of wealth. He was a fixer, paid to make scandals vanish. He slid a file in my direction. Your father contacted me at 7 o'clock this morning. Your $500,000 bail is paid. You are free to leave. I stared at the file, not touching it. How could he know? Palmer gave me a rehearsed smile. News travels fast in this city, especially about a detective's family. I was arrested at 7. I have only been here 2 hours. Nothing has been reported. Your father has his ways? Ways that told him I was taken from my apartment at 6:47. I leaned in close. He knew before the official report was even filed. That is when Palmer's fake smile disappeared. I do not know how your father got his information, he said. What matters is that he acted quickly to get you out. Why? The word felt heavy in the quiet room. Palmer watched me carefully. Because he is your father. We have not talked in 3 months. Family is family, Miss Sutton. He finally opened the folder. We must talk strategy. You have 4 very serious charges. They are attempted murder, assault, a felony, hit and run, and endangering a child. The prosecutor will not be lenient, he continued. The victim is the wife of Detective Robert Pfizer. Their 7-year-old daughter was with her. My stomach twisted into a tight knot. A little girl. I did not do it. We have to prove that. Right now, all the evidence points to you. He took out a document. Your driver's license was found at the crash site. An anonymous 911 call said you ran away. We need to confirm your alibi and fight their evidence. What 911 call? Palmer looked at his notes. It came in at 9:27 last night. The caller said a woman who looks like you was running from the scene. 9:27, that was just 10 minutes after the crash. Who called? It was anonymous, he answered. That makes things very difficult for us. My mind was racing. An anonymous call cannot be traced. It came from someone who wanted to remain invisible. Someone who… Miss Sutton. Palmer's voice was filled with concern. Where were you last night? I was home. I was on a video call with clients in Singapore from 9 until 10. The whole thing was recorded. Was anyone with you after 10 o'clock? He asked. I just shook my head. He said that gave them an opening. Palmer jotted something down. The accident happened at 9:14. He noted my video chat started at 9, so I was on screen. This will be very good for your case. We can use that, he stated. I was on that call for a whole hour inside my apartment. We will definitely require a copy of that video, he demanded. We also have to learn how your license got to the accident. I started to say something, but paused. My license? I was sure I lost it months ago. I need to get my laptop, I said. My whole life's work is on it at home. Palmer only gave a slight nod. Your father has requested you come to his house. He has called a family meeting. His calm tone made my skin crawl. How did my father already know about this? Excuse me? I asked. Did you say he wants me there? Is that an order from him? Palmer's face showed no emotion. Your father is worried. He wants to keep you safe and get everyone aligned. Tell him I can be there this evening, I answered. I need to go home and figure this out first. Palmer's jaw clenched. Your father was very clear. He wants you in Westlake right now. His use of wants felt like a threat. I stood up from my seat. I appreciate you arranging the bail. I will contact you. Miss Sutton, I really think you should… I interrupted him. I will be in touch. I left before he could finish. A clerk at the desk gave me my things back in a big brown envelope. It held my phone, wallet, and my keys. The phone was completely dead. I found a charger and waited 10 minutes for it to come to life. As soon as it turned on, my phone exploded with alerts. 47 missed calls. I saw messages from friends and even strangers. I started scrolling down the screen. My father, Wallace, had written, "Be calm. Say nothing to anyone. Get to Westlake." He sent that at 7:14 this morning, just 30 minutes after they took me. My mother, Margaret, wrote, "Paige is a total mess. You need to come home." Her text was from 7:22. I just looked at the screen. Paige is a mess. My sister is 28 and still at home. She plans weddings for very rich people. We have not talked since July. Why would she be upset? She could not have heard about my arrest. I did not tell a soul, but perhaps she heard something. I kept scrolling down. More messages from my father. My mom's business partner asked if I was okay. Some people from my job at Securate Solutions even reached out. How did everyone find out about this so quickly? I signed my release forms without looking at them and walked out of the station. The September sun was harsh and bright. The Austin heat hit me like a solid object. The air was thick and wet, the kind that makes you perspire instantly. The courthouse entrance was almost empty. A man was smoking and a woman was yelling at her phone. They were just regular people living normal lives. The police had released me, but I felt trapped. I opened my phone to make a call. I had to phone my boss. I needed him to know this charge of attempted murder was a huge misunderstanding. First, though, I needed to know what really went on last night. I opened my building's security app. My account let me see the cameras for the hall and the lobby. The footage would prove if someone came to my apartment. The app was so slow on the station's bad Wi Fi. Finally, the login screen showed up. The last time it was accessed was 3:14 this morning, September 17th, 2024. Then I saw the location's internet address. A chill went through me. It was from my parents' house in Westlake Hills. Someone used my security login from their home 12 miles from here. That happened only 4 hours before the police came for me. My hands started to shake. Wallace and Margaret's address is 1847 Westlake Drive. I knew it well. I set up their internet system 5 years back. A person in my family was looking at my cameras in the middle of the night. They were watching me, or maybe they were deleting proof. I looked back toward the station, then at my phone. I saw my father's messages insisting I come to them. Suddenly, everything made horrible sense. This was no misunderstanding, it was a frame up. The apartment felt strange when I walked in. The one place I felt safe now seemed tainted. My basic furniture and the large windows with the lake view always calmed me down. Nothing was out of place, which was exactly what was wrong. It was all just as I left it 2 hours ago. That was just before three officers smashed my door in and arrested me. The coffee maker was still on. My coffee sat on the counter, now cold. My laptop was on the table, the screen asleep. I shut the door and threw every lock I had. I rested my back on it and tried to breathe evenly. I needed a clear head. My father would be waiting for me in about 6 hours. So I had 6 hours to figure this all out. 6 hours to find out who took my identity and set me up for this awful crime. I put my phone down and tapped my laptop's trackpad. It woke right up. The password was in and my web browser was still open. I saw my work page and the video chat with my Singapore client. A Dallas company's report was still unfinished. It all looked perfectly fine. But it was not fine. I started a new browser window to check my own security system. I designed it myself 3 years ago. It watched over everything, from motion sensors and locks to the video cameras. The whole place was locked down and secure. I pulled up the event history for last night, September 16th. The system showed the front door locking at 9 p.m. My home's own records could clear my name. The system tracked everything. My video conference began at 9:02 at night. It ended at 10:14. A kitchen motion detector triggered shortly after that. I started watching Netflix at 10:47. My bedroom lights went out at 11:32 and turned on at 6:30 in the morning. This information was a perfect alibi proving I never left, but the police did not care about my evidence. They only cared about the driver's license they found, and that license was mine. I closed the laptop and went to my bedroom. My wallet sat on the bedside table right in its usual spot. I grabbed it and checked the contents. My credit cards were there. My company badge was in its place with a $20 bill. But the space for my driver's license was vacant. The little plastic screen was empty. I just looked at it, confused. When did I last see that license? I sat on the edge of the bed and made myself think. I barely drive because Austin traffic is terrible. My Tesla mostly sits in the parking garage. I thought I had used it recently, but that was not right. And then the gym came to mind. My heart started to pound. It was 2 months back, around the end of July. I went to a fitness center in Westlake Hills, not far from my parents' house. I was there for some family event, but I forget the occasion. I think it was a birthday party for a relative. I can picture my gym bag, holding my wallet and my clothes. I put the bag in a locker and took a 45-minute class. After I showered, I headed out. I never even thought to look in my wallet. I just threw it in my bag and went home. A terrible feeling started to rise inside me. I took my phone and looked through my pictures from July. I found one from July 21st. It showed my sister Paige and me at my parents' huge home. She had a big smile and wore a white sundress. I was still in my workout gear. The photo was taken at 11:47 in the morning. Behind us, my gym bag was open on a nearby chair. My face went pale. Paige was with me that entire morning. We had brunch just after I finished at the gym. She even gave me a hand with my bags when we got to the house. It would have been simple for her to take the license from my bag. I fell back on the bed looking at the picture. Paige is my sister. I know she can be selfish and childish, but I never thought she could do something illegal. She would not steal from me and set me up, or would she? I thought about my mom's message from this morning. She said Paige was a wreck and that I had to come home. Why would she be a wreck? I looked at my phone, but Paige had not sent any new messages. We had not spoken since the beginning of August. Our last conversation was a text about her engagement party. I told her I could not make it. She just sent back a rude emoji. That was the end of it. This kind of silence was normal for my sister and me. Paige and I were never very close, but this felt different. This was a calculated strike against me. I checked my security logs on my laptop one more time. At 3:14 in the morning, someone logged in from a distance. The login was from Westlake Hills, Texas. They used a special password to get in. This person knew exactly when to look at my records. They knew my alibi was perfect. They knew I was at home, completely safe, but they called the police anyway and framed me. I got to my feet and put my phone away. I was not going to let my father control this situation. I was going to Westlake right now to face my family. Driving to Westlake Hills felt like walking into a trap. I took the scenic route to see the city views. The sun was setting, filling the sky with orange and pink colors. It was a beautiful evening in Texas. I kept my eyes on the road. When I got to the Westlake gate, my hands were calm, but my heart was racing. I punched my birthday into the keypad at the gate. We had used that code for 15 years. The large iron gates opened for me. The house at 1847 Westlake Drive sat at the end of a long drive. It was a massive three-story home with huge white pillars. The driveway was a perfect circle. It looked like the home of an old, wealthy family. But my father only bought it 12 years ago when his business took off. Light poured from every window of the house. I parked my car behind my mother's and paused for a moment. I needed to stay calm and breathe. I took a deep breath, took my phone, and got out. The front door swung open before my hand reached it. My father, Wallace Sutton, was standing there, arms crossed. He was 61, with styled silver hair and a sharp suit. I figured you would come here, he said. We have to talk. I brushed past him without a word. The foyer was unchanged. It had the same marble floors and sparkling chandelier. A large landscape painting of Texas hills was on the wall. The air smelled of lavender and wealth. My mother, Margaret, came out from the kitchen. She seemed smaller, with her perfect blonde hair and clean blouse. She rushed toward me. Reagan, honey, this is all so awful. Are you okay? I took a small step away from her hug. How did you know I was arrested? My father's face went from calm to stone. Gregory called me. Now come in and have a seat. We have to come up with a plan, Wallace said. He turned and walked into the living room, expecting me to follow him. My mother, Margaret, waited a moment before she went after him. I stayed in the hall, just taking it all in. This house never felt like a home to me, not in all these years. It was always my father's place, ruled by his money and his expectations. I finally went into the living room. Wallace was in his giant leather armchair, a glass of scotch in his hand. That was his chair, and no one else was ever allowed to sit there. Margaret was sitting on the very edge of the sofa, looking extremely anxious. They both looked at me like I was a problem that needed to be fixed. I sat in a chair facing them and crossed my arms. Wallace spoke first. Gregory says their case is weak. All they have is your driver's license and an anonymous tip. We can win this. I just stared at him. An anonymous tip? What kind of tip? My mother's hands were twisting in her lap. Someone called 911. They said they saw a woman who looked like you running from the scene. I asked, who made the call? My father's voice got sharp. It was anonymous. That is what the word means. I looked right at him. He was lying. I saw it in the way he held his glass. I saw it in the way my mother avoided my eyes. They knew exactly who called the police. Before I could say anything, I heard footsteps from the kitchen. Reagan! It was Paige standing in the doorway. Her eyes were huge and her makeup was messy from crying. She had on a big cashmere sweater and yoga pants. Her blonde hair was in a messy ponytail. She had clearly been crying for a long time. She hurried over to me as if she was going to hug me. I stayed completely still and did not move toward her. Paige stopped a few feet away, her smile disappearing. Oh my God, are you all right? Her voice was shaky. I cannot believe this is happening. Jennifer Fisher is a good friend of my wedding planner. This is a total nightmare. A weird feeling of calm came over me. So Jennifer is friends with your wedding planner. Paige blinked. Well, you know Austin is a small town. Everybody knows everybody, right? I watched her face closely. The tears seemed real. Her eyes were red and her face was puffy. But something was not right. Her hands were shaking, but her eyes were focused and clear. This was not a breakdown, it was a performance. Paige, I said, my voice very slow and deliberate. Where were you last night at 9:14? The room went completely silent. Wallace slammed his glass on the table next to him. What on earth kind of question is that? I kept my eyes on Paige. It is a very simple question. Where were you? Paige's mouth moved, but no words came out. I I was here. I was at home with Mom and Dad. We were eating dinner. I looked over at Margaret. Is that the truth? Yes, she said instantly, almost too fast. Yes, the three of us had dinner together right here. What did you eat for dinner? Margaret paused. I cooked a chicken, a whole chicken. And what time was that? 7. Wallace jumped in. We ate at 7 o'clock. Paige was here all night. What are you trying to say, Reagan? I slowly stood up from my chair. Paige shifted her weight, putting a little space between us. I am not suggesting anything, I said calmly. I am just asking questions. Someone used my driver's license to ruin a woman's life. Someone hacked my security system from this house at 3 in the morning. And someone called 911 to make sure I was the one to take the fall. That is completely absurd, Wallace started to say. Is it? I looked straight at Paige. Is it really? My eyes fell to her left hand, which was wrapped in a bandage. White gauze covered her knuckles, held in place with medical tape. How did you hurt your hand? I asked. Paige glanced down at it, then quickly shoved her hands into her sweater pockets. It is nothing. I just cut myself cooking. When was that? Yesterday. Was it before or after 9:14? Reagan, that is quite enough. Wallace stood up, his voice booming. You are upset and you are frightened. But you will not enter my home and start accusing your sister. I have to use the bathroom. The room fell completely quiet. It is upstairs, I stated. Wallace's jaw was clenched tight. After a tense moment, he gave a short, sharp nod. I walked out of the living room, went up the familiar stairs, and took a left. But I did not go into the bathroom. I walked right into Paige's bedroom. What I was about to find in there would change everything for all of us. Paige's room looked exactly the same as I remembered. The walls were still a soft shade of pink. The air hung heavy with a sense of privilege, like an expensive perfume. I quietly shut the door and stood perfectly still, just listening. From downstairs, I heard Wallace's angry voice, then my mother's soft replies. The quiet sound of glasses clinking followed. It was working perfectly. They thought I was in the bathroom. I looked around the bedroom. A large bed was made with a clean white blanket and flawless pillows. The vanity was covered in expensive creams, serums, and jade rollers. Through a partly open closet, I could see designer handbags arranged like trophies. A laptop was on a desk near the window. The screen was dark, but a small light showed it was only sleeping. I crossed the room in 3 silent steps and touched the mousepad. The screen flickered to life. It had no password, just a very neat desktop. The background photo was a professional engagement picture. Paige was smiling for the camera in a white lace dress. Her hand was on the chest of a man in his 30s with dark hair, a nice watch, and a confident smile. I had never seen him before. I looked at the icons at the bottom of the screen. Safari, Messages, Instagram, a calendar, and 7 open tabs. I leaned closer to get a better look. The first few pages were completely normal. A wedding location in Fredericksburg. A Pinterest page called Fall Wedding Ideas. A Saks Fifth Avenue cart contained 3 bridesmaid dresses. It was all just typical wedding planning. I was about to close the laptop when I saw the final browser tab. The label said, Private Browsing. My hand stopped right over the trackpad. I clicked on it. A list of websites showed up on the screen. It was the search history from a private session. It seemed one website was still open. A cold feeling moved through my body as I read the list. September 14th, 2024, at 11:47 at night. How to anonymously report a hit and run in Austin. September 14th, 2024, at 11:52 at night. Do police check family member alibis? September 15th, 2024, at 12:03 in the morning, Austin Police Department non-emergency line. September 15th, 2024, at 12:18 in the morning. How long does car forensic analysis take? September 16th, 2024, at 3:47 in the afternoon. Can police find deleted text messages? September 16th, 2024, at 8:52 at night. What is the punishment for leaving an accident scene in Texas? I could only look at the screen. My heart was beating fast in my chest. Paige had researched all of this for days, well before the accident happened. She learned how to secretly report a crime, how to fool the police, and how to frame an innocent person. And the night of the accident, she followed every single step. My hands were shaking as I took out my phone and opened the camera. I took three fast pictures, one of the entire screen and two close up shots of the search history. I closed the web browser and put the laptop to sleep, making the screen black again. I stepped away from the desk, breathing heavily. I knew I had to find more proof. The search history alone was not going to be enough proof. A good lawyer would say it was just curiosity. They would claim Paige was writing a crime novel or something similar. I needed something real. I went to the vanity and opened the top drawer. It was full of makeup brushes, lipstick tubes, and fake eyelashes. In the second drawer, I found tangled jewelry and a small blue Tiffany box. I opened the third drawer and my entire body froze. In the very back, underneath a pile of old birthday cards, was a small black notebook. I picked it up. The cover was simple and plain. There was no title. It was just a cheap spiral notebook you might use for shopping lists. When I opened it, a feeling of nausea washed over me. The first page was dated July 29th, 2024. Day 1. Took R's license from her gym bag. She had no idea. I will hide it in my car for the perfect time. I turned the page. Day 18. Researched Austin police methods. They always arrest the person whose ID is at the scene. They trust anonymous tips. Day 32, I have located the perfect victim, Jennifer Fisher, a detective's wife. This is a very good choice. Hitting the wife of a police officer will guarantee a huge investigation. Reagan will have no escape. Day 47, I did a practice drive. I went past 4th and Elm at 9:15 at night. The street is very dark. No cameras are there. The victim walks her dog there at that exact time. Day 60. The engagement party is this weekend. Reagan is not coming. This is wonderful. She is already creating distance from the family. It will be so much easier to ruin her life. Day 75. Only 1 week to go. Everything is ready. The license, the car, and the entire plan. Reagan's wonderful little life is going to fall apart, and I will finally become the daughter they are proud of. It felt like all the oxygen had been pulled out of the room. My vision began to get blurry. Paige did not just steal my license, she planned this for months. She followed Jennifer Fisher, she practiced throughout. She researched exactly how to frame me, step by step, as if it were a project for school. It was like I was just a problem that she had to solve. I heard footsteps coming down the hall. I pushed the notebook back into the drawer, shut it silently, and stood up right as the door opened. Paige stood there, her eyes full of suspicion. Reagan, what are you doing in my room? I kept my face blank, trying to appear exhausted and sad. I just needed a moment alone. It has been a very difficult day. Paige entered, her eyes scanning the entire room. She looked at the desk, the closet, and then the vanity. Why did you come to my room? The other bathroom was busy, I answered. I just needed a quiet place. Her eyes stayed on the desk and the laptop for a moment. Then she looked back at me. You should probably go home, she said, her voice becoming softer. You need some rest. This has all been so much. I just nodded. Yes, I believe you are right. I walked toward the door, but Paige took my wrist. You do believe me, don't you? Her voice shook as new tears formed in her eyes. That I was here with Mom and Dad. You believe me, right? I looked down at her hand, at her knuckles. They were covered with new scrapes. The skin was raw and red, like it was just beginning to heal. It was the exact kind of injury an airbag leaves when it slams your hands into the steering wheel. I stared straight into her eyes. I believe you, I said softly. You are my sister. Relief flooded her face as her tight grip on my arm finally relaxed. I walked out of her room and down the stairs, moving right past Wallace and Margaret without a word. I did not even say goodbye. I got into my car and drove away from that house, but I did not head home. I only went 2 blocks before I had to pull over. My hands were trembling on the steering wheel as I grabbed my phone. Three things were now crystal clear. First, Paige had looked up how to frame someone for a serious crime weeks before it even occurred. Second, she had fresh cuts on her hands that looked exactly like they came from an airbag. And third, my parents were helping her hide everything. But the one question that mattered most was still unanswered. I could not figure out why Paige had been plotting to destroy me for so long. I did not get any sleep that night. By 6 in the morning, I was in my home office. The glow of 3 computer screens lit the room as I hunted for digital clues. The pictures from Paige's room were on the left screen. I studied the search history, the dates, and the times. The middle screen showed a command line, its cursor blinking with patience. On the right, I began creating a timeline. On July 21st, my driver's license disappeared from my gym bag. On July 29th, Paige began her journal. From September 14th to the 16th, she was searching online how to frame a person for a hit and run. The hit and run took place on September 16th at 9:14 in the evening. I was arrested the next day on September 17th at 6:47 in the morning. But the story they told everyone had some serious problems. A search history and a diary were not going to convince a jury. I needed hard evidence. I had to find something that would stand up against the expensive lawyers my father would definitely hire. I leaned back in my chair, took a sip of cold coffee, and looked at the ceiling. All of a sudden, a memory popped into my head. 5 years ago, my mom asked me to set up their family plan for iCloud. She wanted a simple way to share pictures and calendars. I spent an entire afternoon connecting all of their accounts. Since I was the one who set it up, I was still the administrator for the family. That meant I could access all of their devices. I shot up in my chair, opened a new browser, and went straight to the iCloud login page. I typed in the family administrator password. The home screen appeared showing the 4 accounts belonging to my family. I clicked on Paige's name. A list of her devices showed up. An iPhone 14 Pro, a MacBook Pro, and an iPad Air. Every single one was online right now, and they were all in the middle of backing up their data. A small smile appeared on my face. Let's see what you have been hiding, little sister. I chose the iPhone backup from 2 days ago, September 16th, the day of the incident. The 6 gigabyte file started to download. I got another cup of coffee and I waited. The green progress bar moved so slowly, it finally hit 90%, and then it was complete. I opened the file with a special data recovery program from my work. The software revealed absolutely everything that was on her phone. I could see all of her text messages, her photos, her app data, her call logs, and her location history. I decided to look at her messages first. The program was able to restore several conversations that she had already deleted. I opened the first one. It was a text conversation between Paige and a number I did not recognize. The area code was 214, which was from Dallas. I scrolled all the way to the beginning of their chat. The very first message was from July 15th, 2024. It read, "I have the product you asked for, $500, Bitcoin only." Paige wrote back, "How do I know it is the real deal?" The unknown person replied, "It will scan perfectly. I have used it before. I never had a problem." The horrible reality hit me like a ton of bricks. She had purchased a fake ID. I continued reading. On July 28th, Paige sent a message asking if it would work in bars. The seller said it would, but then warned her that just one drunk driving charge would ruin it all. My hands squeezed the arms of my chair. Drunk driving. She had actually intended to get into an accident while she was drunk. She was going to use my license to get away with it. She even made a new identity to prepare for it. I took a picture of the screen with my phone and put it in my evidence folder. After that, I looked at her payment history. Paige's Venmo was connected to the family iCloud, which gave me full access. I went back to the middle of July to the 15th. I found a payment for $500 sent to a user named Alex M. The message with the payment said, "Thanks for the hookup." I looked up the username and found an Alex Martinez, a 32-year-old man who lived in Dallas. Then a security tool I use for my job found his name on the dark web. I found Alex Martinez's name on websites that sold fake documents and phones that could not be traced. This guy was a professional, not just some kid. Paige had paid him $500 through a carefully hidden Venmo transaction. I kept digging. I got into Paige's Coinbase account, which she had linked to our family plan to buy cryptocurrency a few years back. I went through her transaction records. On July 15th, 2024, she bought $500 worth of Bitcoin. That same amount was then transferred to a secret digital wallet. The wallet could not be traced, but the date and the time were an exact match. She got the Bitcoin on the same day she sent the money to Alex Martinez. She was being careful right from the very beginning. I saved the Coinbase record to my growing pile of evidence. Next, I pulled up her credit card statements. The purchases were mostly for normal things like makeup, clothes, and yoga classes. But one charge was completely different. On August 10th, 2024, she sent $200 to a company called Insight Surveillance. A quick online search told me it was a private investigation agency in South Austin, known for being discreet and expensive. My heart started to race. Why would she need to hire a private investigator? Was she spying on me or was she following Jennifer Fisher to learn my routine and create her story? I opened a new tab on my browser and went to the company's website. The agency's website listed services for following people and learning their daily routines. They could absolutely ruin a person's life and make it look like a terrible accident. I fell back into my chair, struggling to breathe. This was not some quick decision she made. It was not a desperate attempt to cover up a mistake. Paige had been planning this for 2 months, maybe even longer. She got a fake driver's license. She learned how to frame me for a crime. She hired a private detective. She used cash and crypto to hide what she was doing. She even practiced the route she was going to drive. She chose her victim very carefully. She had planned this out like a school project. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Wallace asking how I was doing. I did not answer. I could not talk to him right now. Not until I had everything I needed. I looked back at the glowing screens. The cloud backup was still working. I searched through the files, looking at photos and calendar appointments. And that is when I saw it. A folder on her tablet was labeled Private Journal. It was last updated on September 16th, 2024 at 11:32 in the evening, right before I was arrested. My hand was shaking as I moved the mouse. I knew this journal would prove my worst nightmare was true. Paige did not just frame me. She had written down the entire plan. Every single step, every choice, and every single thing she did to destroy my life was in there. I clicked on the folder and began to read. Hold on. Before I tell you what was in Paige's 90-day plan to destroy me, I need you to guess what comes next. Press 1 if you think she did this all by herself. Press 2 if you think my parents were in on it. Or press 3 if you have a feeling this story is about to get a whole lot wilder. This was not just evidence, this was a whole playbook. Day 1, jealousy. Day 47, victim selected. Day 89, goodbye to my big sister. She wrote it all down, so proud and organized. I should probably tell you that I have changed some details for this story. It deals with some serious betrayal, so you might want to stop here. But if you want to know how my own sister plotted my downfall for 3 months, please keep watching. This journal reveals everything. It will make you second guess everything you think you know about family. I made a pot of coffee because I knew it was going to be a very long night. The journal had 90 days of her secret thoughts. I sat down, opened the file, and started to read from the beginning. The first entry was from June 18th, 2024, a full 3 months before the accident. I took a deep breath. Day 1, dinner tonight. Dad just went on and on about Reagan's promotion. $178,000 a year, Reagan. Reagan is a director at 33. I am so tired of hearing her name. I plan weddings for wealthy people, but dad acts like my job is a joke. I am sick of being in her shadow. I stared at the words on the screen in complete disbelief. It all began with jealousy. Simple, ugly jealousy. My job, my money, my life. That was all it took for her to want to destroy me. I remembered that dinner on June 18th. Wallace had convinced me to go out for a celebration. Paige was so sweet that night. She even gave me a hug and told me she was proud. But secretly, she despised me. I continued reading. Day 15. I have a strategy. Reagan is so smug about her cybersecurity job. She will not expect this at all. First, I need to get her driver's license. Then I need to find the perfect person. It must be someone who makes the police so angry that they will not even think to check an alibi. My hands began to shake. The perfect person. She chose Jennifer on purpose. It was not an accident. It was a cold, deliberate decision. For 2 weeks, she had been planning my ruin. She understood the key was a victim that would make the police too emotional to do a proper investigation. I kept scrolling down. Day 28. Reagan goes to the Westlake gym every Wednesday. So predictable. I will run into her tomorrow. I will take her license while she is in the shower. I closed my eyes. July 12th. I was at the gym that day. She sent me a message. I am near mom's. Want to get brunch after your workout? That text message had made me feel so incredibly happy. We talked for a while before I took a shower, leaving my purse unzipped. When I came back, both Paige and my driver's license were gone. I read on as a cold dread twisted in my stomach. Day 35. I have it. Reagan's license is finally mine. She has no clue that it is even missing. She is so trusting. I could not believe she called me naive. For 30 years, I was the one who looked out for her. Trusting her was my only mistake. I made myself read the next entry. Day 40. I spotted Reagan at her usual coffee place today. She looked so happy and content. That feeling will not last for much longer. A chill went straight down my spine. July 20th, Cosmic Coffee on South Congress. I remember feeling that someone was watching me. But when I looked around, the street seemed completely empty. It was not empty. Paige was there watching me and planning my downfall. Day 47. I have discovered the ideal person. Jennifer, the wife of Detective Robert Fisher. She is a nurse who works with children, the perfect innocent target. She drives home from the hospital on Tuesdays and Thursdays around 9 at night. Her drive takes her past Lamar and 6th, and this is the truly brilliant part. When a police officer's family member is hurt, the whole department responds. They will arrest the person whose identification is found at the scene. They will not ask any questions until much later. Reagan will have no way to prove her innocence. A wave of nausea washed over me. She had picked a detective's wife with cold calculation. She knew the police would act on emotion and never even check my alibi. She was turning the justice system into a weapon to use against me. I kept reading the journal entries. They became more detailed and more organized. Day 52. I hired a private detective in South Austin. I paid him $200 for a complete report on Jennifer Fisher's daily life. It was a very good investment. She actually paid someone to follow Jennifer just to learn her schedule. This was so much more than simple jealousy. This had become her life's mission. Day 60. The engagement party is getting closer. Reagan will not be there. This is perfect. She is already creating distance from the family. This will make it so much easier to destroy her. August 10th. I did not go to her party. I told everyone that I had to work. I believed I was just avoiding a family argument. I had no idea I was walking right into her trap. Day 68. I bought a fake identification card in Dallas for $500 using Bitcoin. It can pass a scanner so I can use it if I get stopped before the big event. Reagan's license will remain clean until the right time. She had a thought out plan for every single detail. She used a fake name, secret payments, and had backup plans. This was not a quick moment of anger, this was a carefully planned assault. Day 75. I performed a practice run last night. I took Dad's Range Rover through the intersection after a few drinks at 9:15. I did not see any police cars or video cameras. The timing is absolutely flawless. Jennifer drives through at that exact moment every night. I had to look away from the computer screen. My eyes began to burn with tears. She actually practiced it. She intentionally drove drunk to test her scheme, to make sure she could get away and to get the timing just right. This was not some horrible accident. It was not a desperate attempt to hide a crime. It was a full rehearsal. On September 2nd, I was at home working that night. Just 12 miles away, my sister was practicing how to completely ruin my life. I forced myself to continue reading. Day 82. I informed mom about the entire plan. She cried for a little bit, but then dad spoke with her. He told her, Reagan has always been so difficult. She always acted as if she was better than all of us. He also said this entire experience will teach her a lesson in humility. Mom then agreed that she would make the anonymous 911 call. She would use a disposable phone and say she saw someone who looked like Reagan running from the accident. The plan was completely perfect. I felt something inside of me break into pieces. My own mother had approved of this plan. She cried, but Wallace talked her into it. They both believed that I deserved what was coming to me. I was a problem because I refused to let Wallace dictate my career choices. I was a problem for being independent at 25 years old without his money. For that, he believed that some time in prison would finally teach me my lesson. With my eyes blurry from tears, I scrolled down to the last entries. Day 89, September 16th, the evening before my arrest. Everything is ready for tomorrow night. I will hit Jennifer's car at about 9:17. Reagan will be in one of her pointless Zoom meetings, a perfect alibi that will not even matter. I will leave her driver's license on the seat. Mom will call 911 with an anonymous tip. By the next morning, Reagan will be sitting inside a jail cell. She will lose her career, her good name, and her freedom. Finally, she will understand how it feels to have absolutely nothing. And I will finally be the perfect daughter, the one dad can be proud of. Goodbye, big sister. I could not seem to catch my breath. The words on the screen were a complete blur. She wanted to utterly destroy me. She did not just want to frame me, but to erase my whole existence. She planned to steal everything I had worked so hard for and then watch me suffer. And she documented it all as if it were a simple shopping list. Goodbye, big sister. It felt like I was already gone from her life. I leaned back in my chair, feeling completely empty inside. 90 days. It had taken her 90 days to organize my total ruin. But there was one last entry from that very morning. September 18th, only a few hours ago. I clicked to open it. Day 90. Reagan is out of jail on bail. She's probably in her apartment right now trying to make sense of everything. Let her try her best. Even if she thinks it was me, she has no actual proof. By the time she finds anything, taking a plea agreement will be her only choice. Mom and Dad are in charge of her lawyer. The plan is working out flawlessly. I glanced at the time, 6:47 in the morning. That was the exact moment I had begun my own investigation. Paige had no idea that I had found her journal. She did not know I was looking at her iCloud account. She did not know I had copies of her searches, her money transfers, her Bitcoin purchases, and her texts to the guy who made the fake identification. She believed she was totally safe. She believed the battle was already over. That was about to become her biggest mistake. I shut my laptop and sat in the quiet of my apartment. My coffee was now cold. The sun had risen higher, filling my apartment with light, but I did not even notice. I had all the evidence. I had absolutely everything: the browser history, the bank records, the text messages, and a 90-day diary that described every step of her plan to frame me for attempted murder. Yet I still did not know what my next move should be. I could not just go to a police station and present it all to them. Page would say that I had fabricated everything. Wallace would pay for expensive lawyers to make the entire thing disappear. Margaret would lie to the court. Also, I had discovered the journal in our shared family iCloud account. It was not illegal, but Palmer would describe it as hacking. Any lawyer would argue the evidence was gathered improperly and could not be used as proof in court. I needed something more than just the evidence. I needed a better strategy. I got up, poured out the cold coffee, and looked out at the Austin skyline. Somewhere out there, Paige was having a normal day, making wedding plans and messaging her friends, pretending to be concerned about me. She did not know that I had a copy of her diary. She had no idea I had just spent 6 hours tracking every dollar, every deleted text, and every single lie. She believed I was still confused, still defeated, and still the naive older sister she had always known. And she had no idea that now I was hunting for her. I needed some help, not from my family's lawyer, but from someone who actually cared about finding the truth. I looked at my phone for a second, then I searched for the number of the Austin Police Department. My thumb paused right over the call button. This one phone call would change the future of everything. My family would learn that I had decided to turn against them. Paige would discover that I was no longer a victim. But then I saw Jennifer Fisher in a hospital bed and her 7-year-old daughter who had suffered a concussion. I thought about the 90 days of planning, 90 days of cold hearted scheming, and 90 days of my sister choosing that my life had to be destroyed. I pressed the button to call. The phone rang only 2 times before a person answered. Austin Police Department, how may I direct your call? I need to talk to the detective assigned to my case, I said. My name is Reagan Sutton. I was arrested 2 days ago and charged with attempted murder. The case number is 47921. There was a short silence, and then I heard the sound of typing. That case belongs to Detective Bradley, Major Crimes Division. Please hold for a moment. The line changed to hold music. I stood there and waited, my heart hammering inside my chest. Then a man's voice, deep and weary, came on the phone. This is Bradley speaking. I said, Detective, my name is Reagan Sutton. I am the woman who was arrested for the hit and run that involved Jennifer Fisher. I know who you are, Miss Sutton. This is not the proper way to handle this. You need to speak through your lawyer. I have proof that I was framed, I said. My sister is the person who did it, and I need 1 hour of your time. There was a long pause on the line. Then he finally spoke. Your lawyer warned me you might do this. Sounding desperate is not going to do you any favors in court, Miss Sutton. I have her journal, I said. It contains 90 days of entries. She wrote down her whole plan, including why she picked your partner's wife to be her victim. Model. The silence on the other end of the line felt like it stretched for an hour. When Bradley finally answered, his voice was cold. Be at the station, 2 in the afternoon, and make sure you come alone. I walked into the main police station at 1:55 that day. I had my laptop and a small flash drive with all of my research and encrypted files. Bradley was in the lobby waiting. He was a big man in his late 40s with graying hair and intense blue eyes that seemed to have seen it all. He had on a white button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up, and his detective badge was clipped to his belt. He did not offer to shake my hand. He simply said, "Follow me." He took me down several long hallways to a small interrogation room. The room had no windows, just a metal table, 4 chairs, and a camera in the corner. He pointed to a chair. You have 30 minutes. Make me believe you. I set my laptop on the table and opened the journal file. This is my sister Paige's private journal. I have legal access to it. I am the administrator for our family's iCloud account, which I created 5 years ago. My access was never taken away. I spun the laptop around so he could see. This entry is from day 47. It is dated July 30th, 2024. Bradley leaned in, reading the text on the screen. I have found the perfect target. Detective Robert Pfizer's wife, Jennifer. She is a pediatric nurse and a completely harmless victim. Her drive home from the hospital is the same every Tuesday and Thursday at 9 at night, right by Lamar and 6th Street. And this is the best part. When a police officer's family member gets hurt, the whole department jumps into action. They will arrest whoever's identification is at the scene and figure out the rest later. Reagan will never have a chance to prove she is innocent. His expression turned to stone. He looked at me and said, "Continue." I clicked to day 89, which was September 16th, the night before my arrest. Everything is set for tomorrow night. I will crash into Jennifer's car at about 9:17. Reagan will be on one of her useless conference calls. It is the perfect alibi, but it will not matter. I am going to place her license on the driver's seat. Mom will call 911 with a secret tip. By the next morning, Reagan will be in a jail cell. Bradley read the entry a second time. Then he sat back, crossing his arms over his chest. This suggests the whole thing was a setup. But how can I be sure you did not write this yourself? I was ready for that question. You can look at the file's metadata. The entries were made on the exact dates and times you see. You can also check Paige's device history. She was in this file the day before the incident. I can even pull up the iCloud activity log for you. I opened a new window on the screen, but I have more. Here is a Venmo payment to a person in Dallas who makes fake identification. A Bitcoin purchase happened on the very same day, and I was able to get back text messages about buying a driver's license. I turned the laptop back towards him. Bradley leaned forward again, his jaw set. He looked closely at the Venmo records, the Coinbase purchase, and the restored text messages. When he was done, he looked at me. You also claimed you had an alibi that we did not look into. Why is that? Because you arrested me before you even asked. I was on a Zoom call with a client in Singapore from 9 until 10 that night. The entire call is recorded, time-stamped, and saved on the cloud. I can give you the link this very minute. Bradley's eyes narrowed. Why did your lawyer not show this to us? I answered. Because my father's lawyer is not trying to prove my innocence. He wants to shield Paige from the fallout. Bradley got up and crossed to the other side of the room. He stood there quietly for several long moments. At last, he faced me again. If this is all real, we have much more than a car accident. This is a criminal plot. It includes attempted murder and blocking an investigation. Are your parents a part of this? My mother made the anonymous 911 call, I told him. She was at their Westlake Hills house, a good 8 miles from where the crash happened. You can prove it. Just look at the cell phone tower records for that call. The proof is all there. Bradley just looked at me. He then took out his phone and made a call. Pfizer, this is Bradley. I need you in conference room B. About 2 minutes later, the door swung open and Detective Robert Fisher came in. He looked to be in his early 50s, younger than Bradley, with tired eyes and a wedding band. He saw me, and his face instantly hardened. Detective Fisher, I said softly, I am so sorry for what happened to your wife and daughter, but I did not do it, and I can prove it. Bradley pointed to the laptop. Read day 47. Fisher bent over the display. I saw his expression shift from confused to shocked and then to absolute rage. He read the whole entry 2 times. Then he looked up at Bradley. Is this legitimate? The file's digital trail is solid, Bradley confirmed. The cloud data matches up. We also have money records, text messages, and an alibi we never bothered to check. Fisher looked at me, his voice trembling with feeling. Your own sister set this up. She targeted my wife. Yes, I replied, because she knew it would trigger a fast response from the police. She was depending on all of you to be too emotional to look into my version of the story. Fisher's hands squeezed into tight fists. He turned to Bradley. I am officially removing myself from this case. It is a major conflict of interest now, but you need to bring her in right away. Bradley nodded. I completely agree, but we will handle this exactly by the rules. He then turned to me. Miss Sutton, if I go ahead with this, it requires a complete investigation of your whole family. Your sister could face charges for attempted murder. Your parents could be charged with conspiracy and obstruction. Are you prepared for that? I recalled the words Paige wrote in her journal. Goodbye, big sister. I imagined Jennifer Fisher in a hospital bed, and I saw her hurt 7-year-old daughter. I considered the 90 days of planning, 90 days of bitterness, and the 90 days she spent plotting my total ruin. I looked straight at Bradley. I am prepared, but I have to ask for one thing before we start. Bradley waited. I want to be the one who questions Paige for the official statement. That evening, Bradley arranged everything. I sat opposite him in the same room where I had shown him my proof. I saw him dial Paige's number and switch the call to speakerphone. My hands were in my lap, but my heart was pounding. This is the plan, Bradley had said 20 minutes before. We are calling her in as a witness, not a suspect. She will not think she needs a lawyer. You will be there as the victim asking for her help. She will think she is there to support your story. And this is being recorded, I had asked. Every last word. It was a two-way mirror that recorded both audio and video. Anything she said could be used in court. Bradley leaned in a little. But Reagan, you cannot force a confession out of her. No threats and no deals. You just show her the evidence and let her speak. Can you handle that? I looked him straight in the eye. I have spent my entire life protecting Paige from her own choices. Tomorrow, that protection ends. When the phone rang, Bradley's voice turned professional. Miss Sutton, this is Detective James Bradley from the Austin Police Department. I'm calling about the incident with Jennifer Fisher. Paige's voice on the speaker sounded very careful. Yes, how can I help you? We know you are Reagan Sutton's sister. We hoped you could come to the station tomorrow morning as a witness to confirm Reagan's usual schedule and her alibi. There was a short silence. Then Paige's voice became softer, almost sounding relieved. Of course, I will do anything to help my sister. Reagan is not to blame for this. 9 o'clock tomorrow morning at the Central Station. You do not need a lawyer. This is just for a witness statement. I will be there, Page promised him. The call was over. Bradley looked over at me. She sounded relieved. She believes she is coming here to help you convict me, I said softly. Good. Let her believe that right up until she sees your face. For the next hour, Bradley taught me how to conduct an interrogation. We sat across from each other at the table. He scribbled notes on a yellow legal pad while I had my laptop open to Page's journal. Start out slow, he told me. Build a friendly connection first, then bring out the evidence one thing at a time. Do not show her all your cards at once. Let her talk herself into a trap. What if she just denies everything? She will definitely deny it. Let her. Every lie she tells will just make it harder to argue with the truth later. He tapped his notepad. Watch for the small changes in her face. When Paige touches her nose, she is being dishonest. If she looks up and to her right, she is making up a story. If she leans back from you, she is trying to distance herself from her own guilt. And what if she just gets up and walks out? She is not under arrest, so technically she can leave, but people like her love to hear themselves talk. If you give her the stage, she will talk her way right into a confession. I nodded, trying to take it all in. Bradley got up. You should go home. Try to get some sleep. Tomorrow is going to be a very long day. I did not go straight home. I pulled into a coffee shop on South Congress and bought a black coffee that I never drank. I just sat by the window watching the city lights. I saw couples holding hands and tourists taking pictures by the murals. They were all just normal people living normal lives. I remembered Paige when she was an 8-year-old girl, crying after she fell from her bike and scraped her knee. I had carried her inside, cleaned the cut, and put a cartoon bandage on it. Ray, you will always be here to take care of me, right? She had asked me. Always, I promised her. I remembered Paige at 16 after getting caught trying to steal a designer bracelet from a big store. I persuaded the store manager not to call the authorities. I paid for the jewelry, and the ride home was completely quiet. She never even said thank you. I remembered Paige at 23 needing $5,000 for her rent. I sent her the funds that same day. She never returned it, and I never brought it up. That is what big sisters are for. They help out, they make sacrifices, they love without asking for anything in return. And for all that, Paige spent 90 days planning to destroy my life. It was after midnight when I finally made it home. I could not sleep. I sat at my desk and read her journal one more time, memorizing each hateful sentence. Day 47. If I hit the wife of a policeman, they will use every resource they have. Day 75. I practiced the driving route last night. Day 89. Farewell to my dear sister. I stood in my bathroom staring at my reflection, saying the words over and over. Paige, did you take my driver's license again? Paige, did you take my driver's license again? By 3 in the morning, I had recited it 50 times. By 5, I was just looking at the ceiling, waiting for the alarm to sound. At 6 in the morning, my phone vibrated. It was a text from Paige. The police want me to come in this morning to give a statement for you. I am so scared. What should I tell them? I just stared at the text. She was asking for my advice. She wanted my help to ruin me completely. I carefully typed out my answer. Just tell the truth, Paige. That is all we can do. I pressed send. 3 little dots appeared, then went away, then came back again. Then her reply showed up. Okay, I love you, sis. I put my phone down and shut my eyes. In only 3 hours, Paige would walk into the Austin Police Department thinking she was about to save herself. She had no idea she was walking right into a trap, and I, her own sister, was the one who had set it. I got to the station at 8:30 in the morning. Bradley was waiting for me in the hall outside the interview room. This room was different. It was smaller, with a metal table bolted down and a chair on each side. A camera was mounted high in the corner. A giant two-way mirror covered most of one wall. Fisher is on the other side of that glass, Bradley said quietly. He wants to see this for himself. I nodded slightly. The audio and video are both being recorded. I will get her when she arrives. You need to be in your seat already. I will introduce you as the victim, finally here to clear your name. I will say that you asked to speak with her yourself. After that, I will leave the two of you alone. And what if she asks why I am here? Just say you wanted to thank her for backing up your story. Make her feel comfortable. I glanced at the large two-way mirror. I knew Fisher was behind it, watching and waiting. He was waiting for the person who hurt his wife to walk in and admit what they did. What if she denies it all? I asked. Bradley's expression became serious. Then we have to build our case the slow, difficult way. We would have to get warrants and go through all the forensic evidence, but a confession makes everything much quicker, he added. And then she will belong to us, I said, finishing his sentence, completely and totally ours. At 5 minutes to 9 in the morning, a call came through on the detective's radio. Our person of interest has just arrived in the lobby. He looked at me. Are you ready for this? My mind went over the last 90 days. I saw Jennifer Fisher in that hospital bed. I thought about the text message Paige sent me just this morning, the one that said, I love you, sis. I sat down in the chair facing the door and stated firmly, I am ready. The room felt much colder than I expected, or maybe that chill was just coming from inside me. I sat perfectly still, my hands were folded on the table right in front of me, my gaze was locked on the door. At 9 o'clock exactly, the door swung open. Officer Stevens walked Paige into the room. He was the same officer who had put me in cuffs 3 days ago. Paige was in a cream-colored sweater, blue jeans, and flat shoes. Her hair was in a perfect ponytail. She looked so calm, like she was meeting a friend for coffee, not being brought in for questioning. And then our eyes met. All the color instantly left her face. Reagan, her voice was shaking. They told me I was just here to be a witness. My own voice was soft but strong. Sit down, Paige. She paused and looked at the officer. He gestured to the empty chair that was across from me. Then he left the room and closed the door. Paige slowly sat down in the chair. Her gaze darted from me to the mirror and then back to me again. What is going on? Should you not have a lawyer with you? I just stared at her. I told her, this is not about me anymore. Today, this is all about you. Paige let out a nervous laugh. So, what did the detective tell you? He is trying to figure out what really happened, and my role is to assist him. Her eyes quickly moved back to the mirror. I do not understand. You will in a moment. I put a folder on the table between us. I took out the first piece of paper. It was a picture of her internet search log. I pushed it toward her. Paige, on August 20th, did you search for how to report a hit and run anonymously? She simply stared at the page. The color drained from her cheeks again. That is from my computer. How did you get that? Please just answer the question, Paige. Her mouth hung open slightly. I think I was looking that up for a client. As a wedding planner, I research strange things constantly. I pushed another sheet of paper her way. So what about this one? Do police check alibis for family? Was that also for a client's big day? Paige gripped the edge of the table. You went through my personal computer. That is illegal. I only saw our shared family cloud account. As the person who runs the account, I can legally view it all. Paige's jaw tightened, but she remained silent. I leaned in a little. Paige, did you steal my driver's license? She was quiet for a few seconds. No, why would I ever do that? Let's discuss July 12th. It was a Wednesday morning. You were at the Lifetime Fitness in Westlake. I was just visiting mom. She lives right near there. You were there because I am there each Wednesday. You knew my routine. I slid a third paper across the table. It was a check-in record from the gym. It showed we both arrived just 15 minutes apart. I had to go take a work call and I left my locker unlocked for about 5 minutes. When I got back, my license was missing. Paige looked at the gym's sign-in record. That proves absolutely nothing. Paige, where is your driver's license at this moment? Her hands started to move toward her purse. I gave her a stern look. Do not even think about it. I know you have your own license. Because the one found inside the Range Rover was mine. Paige's hand stopped where it was. She clutched her purse tightly. Her fingers were shaking. For the very first time, she appeared truly frightened. This can't be happening. Reagan, you are setting me up. I am your sister. Are you really, though? I interrupted her. My voice was low but incredibly sharp. A real sister would not plot for 3 months to send me to prison. Paige went completely still. What are you talking about? I reached into my folder one final time. I pulled out her private journal. I had printed out all the entries from the past 90 days. I had marked all the key dates and sentences. I placed the pages on the table one by one. I felt like a poker player revealing a royal flush. Paige's eyes grew wide with shock. What is all of this? Let me tell you a little story, Paige. This one is called Day One: How I Will Ruin My Sister. I held up the first page and began to read aloud. Day 1, June 18th. We all ate dinner together tonight. Dad would not stop bragging about Reagan's new promotion. $78,000 a year. Reagan, the director at 33. All I heard was Reagan this and Reagan that. I am so tired of her name. I manage million-dollar events, but Dad treats me like I have no job. I am finished with being in second place. My sister Paige thought her plan was absolutely perfect, but she never counted on this. Her first step was to get my driver's license. Once she got it, she began searching for the ideal victim. She needed someone who would make the police so furious that they would skip checking on an alibi. Paige just continued to shake her head. Stop it, she pleaded. Where did you find that? I told her it all came from her journal, day 28, July 11th. Reagan works out at the gym in Westlake every Wednesday. She is so predictable. I will just go there tomorrow. I will take her license from her locker when she is in the shower. I looked up from the page. You saw me at the gym that day, Paige. You even gave me a hug. You told me that you missed me, and then you went and took my license. I did not do that, she protested. Day 35, July 18th. It worked. I have Reagan's license in my hand right now. She still has not realized it is missing. She is just so completely unaware. My voice cracked on that last word, but I kept going. Day 47, July 30th. I have found the target. It is Detective Robert Fisher's wife, Jennifer. She is a pediatric nurse, the most sympathetic victim I could find. And this is the brilliant part. When a cop's family gets hurt, the whole department gets emotional. They will arrest the person whose ID is at the scene and figure it out later. Reagan will not get a chance to prove she is innocent. Paige was breathing heavily. You broke into my private journal. A judge will throw that out of court. Day 75, September 2nd. I did a practice run tonight. I drove Dad's Range Rover drunk through the intersection at 9:15. I saw no police cars and no cameras. The timing is absolutely perfect. I set the page down and just stared at her. You did a test run, Paige. You drove drunk on purpose to make sure you could pull it off. Tears were now flowing down her face, but I was not finished. Day 82, September 9th. I told Mom about my plan. She was against it at first, but Dad changed her mind. He said this would give Reagan a much needed lesson in being humble. Mom then agreed to make the secret 911 call herself. Paige's voice was breaking. Reagan, please stop reading this. Day 89, September 16th. Tomorrow is the big night. I have it all planned. I am going to hit Jennifer's car at around 9:17. I will leave Reagan's license on the front seat. Mom will call 911 with an anonymous tip. By morning, Reagan will be sitting behind bars. She will lose her job, her good name, and her freedom. She will finally understand what it feels like to have nothing, and I will be the favorite daughter. Goodbye, my dear sister. I placed the last page on the table. The only sound in the room was Paige's heavy, shaky breathing. She stared at the stack of papers, her hands trembling. I can explain everything, she whispered. Can you really? I leaned back in my chair. Because I am listening, Paige. Explain how you spent 90 days plotting to destroy my life. Explain how you stalked Jennifer Fisher. Explain how you practiced driving drunk just to hit her car at the right moment. Explain why you picked a detective's wife. You were betting on the police being too angry to bother checking my alibi. Paige opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. On the other side of the one-way mirror, I knew Detective Bradley was watching. He was recording every sound, every expression, every lie Paige told, and every truth she was about to admit. All I needed was for her to talk. I just wanted her to explain everything. Before my sister Paige says another word, what do you think? Did she do it? In the next minute, she is going to shatter completely. The diary, the internet history, the constant lies, it is all about to come out, and her scream, I wanted you to suffer, will seal her fate. This is a fictional story made for you to enjoy. It is not based on real events, but if you want to hear the moment that destroyed my sister, do not go anywhere. This is the confession that changed our family forever. Paige opened her mouth. She closed it, then she opened it again. I did not do any of those things. Her voice was just a faint sound. Her hands were shaking. You do not understand what I was looking for. I was doing research for my blog about true crime. I listened to a lot of podcasts, Paige. I kept my voice steady and calm. What about your journal? Tell me about the words in your journal. Her face started to crumble. You read my private journal. That is against the law, Reagan. You can never use that. I told her it was a shared computer account for our family, and that makes it perfectly legal. I was the one who created it. I have had access for the past 5 years. You agreed to the rules when Mom set it up, but those are my private thoughts. Her voice got louder and more desperate. You cannot use my thoughts against me. They were only stories. I never actually. I slid the last piece of proof across the table. It was a police photo of the Range Rover. It was a large, black, expensive car. The whole front of it was smashed in. All of the airbags were deployed. That car is registered to Dad's business. You have permission to drive it. The crash happened at 9:17 in the evening. My work video conference was recorded from 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock. I was not driving that car. I looked straight into her eyes. But you were. Paige looked at the photograph and she started breathing very fast. She shot up from her chair and it made a loud scraping noise on the floor. You think you are so clever? Her voice was now filled with poison. I sat completely still. Paige slammed both of her hands down on the table. You were always the perfect one. It was always Reagan is so great and Reagan is so smart. Reagan's perfect report card. Reagan's wonderful job. Reagan's perfect life. So you tried to ruin it? I asked her softly. Yes, she yelled, while tears made paths through her makeup. I wanted you to hurt. I wanted you to know what it feels like to have nothing, to be a total failure. I leaned a little closer. Did you pick Jennifer Fisher for a specific reason? Paige laughed a wild and scary laugh. I did not care if that detective's wife made it or not. She was just a small, unlucky part of my plan. This was all about you and making you pay for being better than me. The room fell silent. Paige gasped for air, her chest moving up and down very fast. I made sure my voice did not shake. So you admit it. You caused that wreck. You put my driver's license there. You tried to set me up for the whole thing. All the blood drained from Paige's face. She finally understood what she just said. Wait, no, that is not what I meant. I tapped the one-way glass 2 times. The door swung open immediately. Detective Bradley entered with a pair of handcuffs. My sister Paige shot up from her chair. No, wait, you have to listen. Bradley's voice was cold and official. Paige Sutton, you are under arrest for attempted murder. He continued, listing the charges: aggravated assault, conspiracy, and obstruction. He moved to stand right behind her. Paige looked at me, her eyes filled with terror. Reagan, do something. I am your sister. Bradley secured her wrists behind her. The metal handcuffs made a sharp clicking noise. I rose from my seat, walked to her, and met her gaze. You lost that right 90 days ago. Bradley read her Miranda rights as he escorted her out. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can be used against you. My sister screamed my name as the detective's voice droned on. Reagan, Reagan, I am so sorry. The door shut, leaving me in total silence. All the proof was laid out on the table: the photo of the vehicle, the web history, the gym hours. I had spent 3 days finding it all, 3 days building a case to ruin her life just as she had schemed to ruin mine. I expected to feel satisfied, but I felt nothing. A horrible realization was coming. This was not the first time my sister had done this, and someone else was still suffering. Just then the door opened and a tired-looking Detective Bradley walked back in. He complimented my work, saying her confession was solid for the courts. I could only nod, unable to speak. Bradley sat down opposite me. He explained that Paige was a flight risk, so she would be denied bail. The district attorney was pursuing charges of attempted murder and assault. She was facing at least 20 years in prison. I finally managed to ask about our parents. He told me they were being questioned that afternoon. My mother made the false emergency call with my father's help. Records proved my mother was 8 miles from the scene at 9:24 that night. She called from Westlake just as I had suspected. I closed my eyes tightly. Bradley continued, saying Jennifer was now in stable condition. Her daughter Emma had a mild concussion but would be okay. Both were ready to take the stand against Paige. He paused, then looked me in the eye. You saved their lives, Reagan. Paige would not have quit. I met his gaze. She will not quit, even from jail. His expression turned grim. Then we will ensure she stays there for a very long time. As he was leaving, he turned around. He mentioned that Paige's background check revealed something odd. It was an old case from 2 years ago concerning a woman named Rachel Murphy. This woman had been accused of taking $85,000 from her job. One false claim had destroyed her entire world. She lost her job, her name, and all she had built. Now she juggled 3 jobs just to survive. A knot of dread formed in my gut. I asked how this connected to Paige. Bradley told me Rachel and my sister were colleagues. The proof used to convict Rachel was fake. Someone had set her up, and the person who supposedly found the evidence was my sister. My head began to swim. Paige set her up. He agreed that was their working theory. Rachel had always claimed she was innocent, but the case went cold. Bradley placed a business card on the table. It had Rachel Murphy's name on it. She was in East Austin, working in a coffee shop. He thought I should talk to her. As soon as he left, I grabbed the card. 2 years ago, Paige destroyed this woman. While she spent 90 days plotting against me, she had practiced on someone else. By 12, Paige was in jail. By 1, my parents were at the station. By 2, I was home, looking at the clues I should not have seen. Bradley had phoned me 30 minutes ago. He said my parents got a lawyer for the 3 of them. The attorney was already trying to have Paige's confession dismissed. I insisted it was voluntary. He said the lawyer would fight it regardless. Bradley pointed me to a new direction. He brought up the old case from 2 years ago with Rachel Murphy. He believed I had to investigate. A history would show a clear pattern. It would label her as a repeat offender. After we spoke, I opened my laptop. Bradley's words echoed in my mind. People like her build up to big things. I signed into the family cloud account and scrolled backward. I went past 2023. Digging into 2022, I found it. An old iPad backup from June of 2022. Inside were pictures, notes, and a document named Private Journal. A chill ran down my spine. There was someone else. The journal contained 30 different entries. I began to read. On June 18th, she wrote that everyone loved Rachel Murphy's work, and she despised it. Paige wrote that Rachel needed to go away. I kept reading. An entry on June 25th detailed her plot to frame Rachel for theft. On July 20th, she admitted to stealing Rachel's password from her unlocked computer. The final entry was from August 15th. Paige described her plan to ruin Rachel that day. The idea was to transfer $85,000 from a client account to a secret one using Rachel's password. She was sure Rachel would be fired or even arrested. After that, Paige would step into her role as lead coordinator. I felt physically ill reading her words. She had destroyed another woman's life 2 years before targeting me. I quickly looked up Rachel Murphy online. A news article from August 17th, 2022 was the top result. It said, Rachel Murphy, an event manager, faced charges for taking $85,000. The story said the proof against the 28-year-old was overwhelming, yet Murphy insisted she was framed. Another article from November noted the charges were dropped because of problems with the evidence. But the harm was already done. Rachel Murphy's career was finished. She could not find work in her field again. Rachel's online photo showed a smiling, self-assured woman. Her profile told a much sadder story. It just said she was seeking a new position. Her last job ended in August of 2022. That 2-year void defined her resume. She had been looking for anything, but her last post was 6 months old. After that, silence. I found her address through public records. She was in a tiny studio in East Austin that rented for about $800 a month. It was the type of place people live in after hitting rock bottom. Paige had methodically destroyed this woman's world with chilling precision. For 2 full years, Rachel had no idea who was behind her suffering. I called Detective Bradley immediately. I have it, the proof. I told him Paige did the same thing to Rachel Murphy 2 years ago. He told me to send everything over. This pattern of conduct would create a strong case against my sister. It showed her actions were calculated and she was still a danger. I had to meet Rachel face to face. She deserved to know who was responsible for her pain. Bradley told me to be careful. I said if Paige framed her, Rachel would want justice too. After hanging up, I grabbed my keys and headed out. Her apartment complex was worn down, a huge contrast to her old photos. At 6 that evening, I knocked on the door of apartment 2B. I heard shuffling inside before the door opened a few inches, caught by a chain. A tired, rail-thin woman looked out at me. Dark circles under her eyes made her look much older than 30. What do you want? She asked. My name is Reagan Sutton, I said. 2 years ago, my sister Paige destroyed your life. 3 days ago, she attempted to destroy mine. We need to talk. Rachel unlatched the chain and swung the door open. The apartment was tiny, maybe 400 square feet, but spotless. This was a room for surviving, not living. A futon served as her couch and her bed. The kitchen area had a hot plate and a mini fridge. I saw no television, only a laptop on a small desk beside a stack of bills. Rachel gestured for me to sit on the futon. She started to offer me a coffee, but then stopped. We both knew it was a luxury she could not afford. I sat down while she stood watching me with cautious eyes. You told me your sister wrecked my life, Paige Sutton. I remember that name. We worked together at Premier Austin events 2 years ago. I know, I answered. You have to see this. I opened the 2022 journal entry on my laptop and showed it to her. This is what Paige wrote in her diary from June to August of that year. She wrote down every detail. Rachel's hands shook as she started to read. Her face went pale. The first entry was about me. Rachel Murphy acts like she is better than everyone. She continued reading. Day 15. I have a plan to get Rachel fired. Day 25. I found out Rachel's computer password. Her voice trembled. Day 30. I am going to use Rachel's login to move $85,000. Oh my gosh. She documented the whole plan. She planned the whole thing just like she did to me, I said in a low voice. Rachel fell onto the couch next to me, her eyes locked on the screen. I told them over and over it was not me. My boss, the police, my own parents, nobody believed a word I said. She looked over at me with tears running down her cheeks. How could they believe me? The evidence against me was flawless. My login, the transfer details, my password on my work computer. I believe you, I told her. Rachel gasped. She wiped her eyes with her hand. Tell me everything, I said. Just tell me what happened. Rachel took a long, deep breath. 2 years ago, I was an event manager at Premier Austin Events. I was very good at my job. In just 3 months, I landed 3 huge clients with major events. My boss was talking about making me a senior manager. She stopped for a moment. Paige started at the company 6 months after I did. At first, she acted friendly, but then she became incredibly competitive. She tried to steal every client I brought in. She would criticize my concepts during meetings. She turned everything into a competition I did not want to be in. Rachel's jaw clenched. Then, that August, $85,000 disappeared from a client's account. Every digital footprint led straight to me. The funds were sent to an offshore bank I had never seen before. I was let go that afternoon. The company decided to press charges. I used all my savings to pay for a lawyer. What was the outcome of the case? I asked. The proof was just too strong, Rachel said. My attorney persuaded the district attorney to drop it if I paid back the money and quit. But my career was over. The story spread through the Austin events community. That charge came up in every single background check. I applied to 200 jobs, I had 2 interviews, and 0 offers. She gestured around her tiny apartment. For 2 years, I have been delivering food just to pay rent here. My parents cut me off. They said I brought shame to our family. Her voice dropped to a barely audible whisper. I lost it all, my job, my money, my family, and she was the reason why. I saw myself in her story, the same person I was just 3 days ago, accused, in jail, and with no one to turn to. But Rachel had no chance to prove her innocence. She paid the price for 2 years while Paige simply found her next victim, me. Rachel, I said, I can prove that Paige did this to you. Her confession is written right here in this journal. And because of what she did to me, we can get them to reopen your case. Rachel's eyes grew wide. Reopen it. After so much time has passed, it demonstrates a clear pattern of her behavior, I explained. Paige set you up in 2022. She tried to set me up in 2024. Her strategy is the exact same: steal a person's identity, do something criminal, plant all the evidence, ruin their life. When we take this to the district attorney, they will understand that she does this over and over. She is a predator. Rachel was in total shock. If we can prove it, can I have my old life back? I cannot promise that, I said honestly, but we have no choice but to try. Rachel did not speak for a minute, then she put her face in her hands. When she looked back up, her expression was completely different. The weariness was still there, but a new feeling had taken its place. It was determination. What do you need from me? She asked. Be at the police station tomorrow morning, I instructed her. You have to file an official statement. Tell them what happened in 2022. I will bring the journal. Detective Bradley is working my case. He will hear your side and see how it lines up with Paige's own writing. Do you think they will actually listen this time? Rachel asked. Her voice was shaky, caught somewhere between hope and fear. They will listen, I promised her. This was different because Paige had confessed to framing someone. No one could accuse me of making things up. I was the second victim in her history. Rachel nodded her head slowly. Okay, I will be there. I told her there was one more thing. When this becomes public, Paige's lawyers will target you. They will claim you are seeking revenge or trying to profit from me. They will try to destroy your remaining reputation. Rachel's face hardened. Let them. I have endured this humiliation for 2 very long years. This time, I am fighting back. I stood up and held out my hand to her. We will handle this as a team. Rachel got up and shook my hand. Her grip was strong. As a team. After I left her apartment, my phone vibrated on the way to my car. It was Detective Bradley. Reagan, there is a problem. Wallace and Margaret posted Paige's bail. It was $500,000. She has been released. My stomach clenched. When did this happen? About 20 minutes ago. Her attorney claimed she was not a danger and had strong ties here. I remembered a sentence from Paige's diary, day 90. Even if Reagan suspects me, she cannot prove it. But Paige did not realize I had her diary. She did not know I had found Rachel, and she was totally unaware of what would happen next. Bradley, I said, be sure Rachel Murphy is there tomorrow, and I have to speak to the district attorney. We are not bringing one charge against Paige, we are bringing two. We needed to show that she had done this kind of thing before. The next 3 days were a whirlwind of police meetings and evidence reviews. We watched the prosecutor prepare a case to put Paige away for a long time. On Friday morning, September 20th, Rachel and I met with Detective Bradley and District Attorney Patricia Monroe. We were in a conference room at the Travis County District Attorney's office. Monroe was 58, with silver hair pulled back in a severe bun. Her sharp gray eyes saw everything. She had managed major cases in Austin for 2 decades. Bradley called her a bulldog. That is exactly what we needed. Rachel recounted her story, providing every last detail. The jealousy, the stolen password, the missing $85,000, and all the fake digital trails Paige left. These included login times, fund transfers, and phony invoices. Her voice was firm, but I could see her hands shaking. She talked about being fired, the police showing up at her home, and her parents cutting her off. Monroe listened to the entire story without interruption. She took no notes. Her expression was unreadable. She just studied Rachel like a scientist, figuring out how to persuade a jury. When Rachel was done, Monroe leaned back. The leather of her chair groaned in the quiet room. Why did you not report you were framed back then? Rachel's voice did not waver, but her hands trembled. I did. No one listened to me. The evidence against me was just too strong. I slid the 2022 journal across the table to her. This will change the situation. Monroe read the pages without a word. Her face remained blank, but I noticed her jaw tighten. Her gaze moved over the words, taking in every single planned detail Page had written. When she finally raised her head, her look was as hard as a rock. This was planned from the very start. Mrs. Murphy, your case is being reopened. Rachel let out a sob as tears of pure relief streamed down her face. Thank you. Monroe did not crack a smile. She just shut the journal and handed it back to me. We are going to need the original and all the electronic evidence you have gathered. On Saturday, September 21st, the district attorney set up a command center for our case. A giant whiteboard covered a wall divided into two timelines, one blue, one red. For 2022 and Rachel Murphy, jealousy in June. A stolen password in July. In August, $85,000 goes missing and Rachel gets framed. For 2024 and Reagan Sutton, the same jealousy in June, a stolen license in July. In September, an attempt on a life, and Reagan gets framed. Monroe stood looking at the board, her arms folded. It is the identical method. This is her pattern. Bradley nodded. We can go after her for a pattern of criminal activity. That will bring a much longer sentence. I want all of it, Monroe commanded. Every diary page, every bank statement, and every witness you can find. I showed them on my laptop all the evidence I had collected that week. I had two different journals, one for 2022 and the other for 2024. They laid out 90 days of my sister's plan against me and 30 days against Rachel. I showed the path of the money with Bitcoin purchases, payments for fake IDs, and money sent to Rachel's offshore accounts. The digital evidence was equally powerful, showing search histories, deleted text messages, cloud storage, and login records. I also gave them a witness list. It had Rachel Murphy's name and Jennifer Fisher's for when she was healthy enough to talk. Emma Fisher was on it too for a statement appropriate for a child about the accident. I even put down Officer Kyle Stevens, the officer who took me into custody. The Uber driver who saw the Range Rover leave the scene was also on the list. Monroe's assistant was a sharp young man named Vincent Shaw. He wrote everything down carefully on a legal pad. He looked to be in his early 30s, dressed in a tailored suit that matched his sharp mind. He said nothing, but I could tell he was already building the case in his head for a jury. When I was done, Monroe looked over at Bradley. How strong is the confession from 2024? It is rock solid, Bradley answered. She gave it willingly, without any pressure. Paige just fell apart during questioning. She admitted to everything on video. Her exact words were, I wanted her to suffer. I did not care if the officer's wife died. A small smile appeared on Monroe's face. Excellent. We are going to make her pay for this. On Sunday, September 22nd, Monroe called us back to her office. Rachel was beside me, and Bradley stood by the door. Monroe had a thick folder on her desk. She opened it up. This is the official list of charges against Paige Sutton. Then she began to read from it. For the crimes in 2024, she is facing 2 counts of attempted murder against Jennifer and Emma Pfizer. The list of charges was a series of major crimes: aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, leaving the scene of an accident, endangering a child. There was also identity theft and obstruction of justice. Monroe turned the page. The crimes from 2022 were equally severe: embezzlement of $85,000, wire fraud, identity theft against Rachel Murphy, and computer fraud. She went to the next page. We have also brought charges for engaging in a criminal enterprise. Monroe finally looked up at me. With all of this evidence, Paige is looking at 25 to 30 years in a state prison. She will not be eligible for parole for at least 15 years. The weight of that sentence filled the room. If Paige ever got out, she would be over 50 years old. The air felt heavy and I could hear Rachel take in a sharp breath beside me. What will happen with my parents? I asked, and my voice sounded strange and far away. Monroe's professional manner softened just a little. Wallace and Margaret are facing their own charges, she explained. They are charged with conspiracy, filing a false police report, and making a fake 911 call. They could get probation if they agree to testify against Paige. And what if they do not? She let the question linger. If that happens, they could get 2 to 5 years each. I slowly nodded my head. They had made their decisions. Monroe closed the file. The arraignment is on Monday morning at 9 o'clock. Paige will enter her plea. I can assure you that she will plead not guilty. After we left her office, we began to get ready for the trial. Monroe spoke to us both. I am going to need the two of you to testify as witnesses. Rachel and I looked at each other and she gave a determined nod. We will be there. The moment we walked out of the district attorney's building, the afternoon air felt heavy and hot. It was still 95 degrees in Austin, and you could see heat waves rising off the street. The air had a strong smell of hot tar and car fumes. Rachel and I walked to the parking structure without saying a word. We were quiet until we got to my car. She finally turned to me. Reagan, she said, her voice filled with feeling, I need to thank you for believing in me, for standing up for me. I looked at this woman, whose life my sister had tried to completely ruin. In that instant, something changed for me. This was no longer just about clearing my own name. It was about making sure Paige could never destroy another person's life again. I told her this was far from over. On Monday, Paige would plead not guilty. That is when the real fight would begin. Rachel nodded, saying she was prepared, but I did not share my biggest fear. I was terrified because Paige was out on bail. She knew perfectly well that I was the one who turned her in. She knew about the journals, about Rachel, and the entire case against her. Paige Sutton now had nothing at all to lose. A person with nothing to lose is the most dangerous kind of person. I remembered what she wrote on day 90. She has no proof. But that was not true anymore, and Paige knew I had all of it. This meant she would either run or come for me, and I did not know which was worse. On Monday morning, September 25th, I found a seat in the public gallery of the Travis County Courthouse. I was there to watch my sister plead not guilty to 14 different criminal charges. The room was completely full. News reporters packed the back rows, writing in their notebooks. On the prosecutor's side, I could see Jennifer Fisher's family. My own parents sat right behind Paige with their lawyer between them, but I was there all by myself. Paige walked into the court wearing a classy cream-colored dress and heels, not a jail uniform. She was still a free woman. The judge was a serious woman in her 60s named Catherine Walsh. She looked down from her high bench. Paige Sutton, you are facing 14 counts, she started. 2 counts of attempted murder, aggravated assault, a felony hit and run, child endangerment, identity theft, and obstruction of justice. The list of charges went on and on: embezzlement, wire fraud, computer fraud, and stealing the identity of Rachel Murphy. The final charge was for organized criminal activity. It took the judge a full 30 seconds to read all of them. Each charge felt like a blow to my stomach. How do you plead? Paige's voice was steady and loud. Not guilty, Your Honor. A terrible feeling of dread washed over me. She was going to use all her resources to fight this. District Attorney Monroe stood up. Your Honor, the state requests that her bail be revoked. The defendant is a serious threat to the witnesses, especially her sister Reagan Sutton. A man named Gregory Palmer then rose. Your Honor, my client has followed all of her bail conditions. She is not a flight risk. She is a well-respected member of this community with no prior offenses. Judge Walsh looked at Paige for a very long moment. Bail will be continued, but Miss Sutton, you are ordered to have no contact with Reagan Sutton or Rachel Murphy. If you violate this order, you will go directly to jail. Is that understood? Yes, Your Honor. The trial date is now set for December 2nd, 2024. Court is adjourned. The judge's gavel hit the wood with a loud crack. I got up and tried to disappear into the crowd leaving the room, but in the hallway I walked right into them. Paige, Wallace, and Margaret were talking in a tight circle with their lawyer, already planning their next move. Wallace saw me and started walking my way. Reagan, we must talk about this as a family. I kept walking. I have nothing to say to you. My mother's voice was shaking. Please, honey. Paige made a mistake. She is your sister. Those words stopped me in my tracks. I turned around to face them. She tried to frame me for a crime that could have put me in prison for 10 years. That is not a mistake. That is a deliberate act of evil. Paige walked toward me, her eyes as cold as ice. You will regret this, Reagan. You are the one who is destroying this family. I did not destroy it, I said, my voice just a whisper. You did, 90 days ago. A sheriff's deputy stepped between us. Miss Sutton, you have to follow the no contact order. You must move away from her right now. Paige gave me one last long look before she turned and left with our parents. I stood alone in the marble hall and watched them go. In that moment, I realized I could never see them as my family again. The next 3 weeks were a flurry of preparations for the trial. The first week, I spent every single day with Monroe's team. They coached me on how to act on the witness stand. Only answer the question you are asked. Do not offer any extra details. The defense will try to make you look like a bitter person, so you have to remain calm. We reviewed the evidence for hours. We played the recording I made on the night of the crime. We studied the journal pages, which were now covered in highlights and notes. We followed the money trail for every single dollar Page had taken. It was every piece of the puzzle I had worked so hard to put together. Then, in the second week, Jennifer Fisher was released from the hospital. 6 weeks after the accident, she could finally walk and speak well enough to give her statement. Monroe arranged for us to meet. Jennifer looked much more delicate in person than in her pictures. Her left arm was in a sling, but her eyes were bright and focused. "Thank you," she said in a quiet voice, "for finding out what actually happened." I did not know what to say. "I am just so sorry that you and your daughter had to experience this. It was not your fault." She reached over with her good hand and gave my hand a gentle squeeze. "You stopped her. That is what matters." Her daughter, Emma Fisher, who was just 7 years old, was still too scared to testify in person. To protect the little girl, Monroe had her testimony recorded on video. She sat in a cozy room where a trauma expert asked her questions in a soft voice. I was only able to watch that recording one time. I saw that little girl describe the crash, the airbag, and her mother's screams. I could not bear to watch it a second time. During the third week, Palmer began filing motions to get evidence thrown out. First, he claimed the journals were an invasion of privacy. Judge Walsh denied it, ruling that my access to the family cloud was legal. Then he tried to get all the iCloud evidence dismissed. That motion was denied too. After that, Rachel gave her official deposition. I watched from behind a one-way mirror as she told her story in a steady, confident voice. She remembered every detail from 2022 without a single mistake. Palmer's assistant grilled her for 2 hours, looking for any weak spot in her story, but she never wavered. On October 15th, Monroe called one last meeting before the trial began. She warned me that I might be on the witness stand for 4 to 6 hours. "Palmer will try to ruin your credibility. He will argue that you faked the journals out of jealousy. You must remain completely calm." I promised her that I would. "He will say that your access to the cloud account was a type of illegal hacking. We know that is not true, but he wants to plant doubt in the jury's minds. You need to be a solid, unbreakable rock." I nodded to show I understood. Monroe leaned back in her office chair. "Reagan, I have put people like her in prison for 20 years. In all my time as a prosecutor, I have never seen a criminal document their own crimes like this. Most of them try to hide what they have done." Paige wrote about her crimes as if she were proud of them. "This is our greatest advantage. Her own words are going to be what convicts her." What if the jury doubts that the journals are real? That is when we will play her video confession. We have Paige on camera admitting she wanted me to suffer. She confessed that she did not care if the other crash victim lived or died. You simply cannot fake that kind of raw hatred. Monroe stood up. "Try to get some rest. The trial starts on Monday, December 2nd at 9 in the morning. We will make sure she never hurts anyone again." The night before the trial, I could not get any sleep at all. I just looked out at the city lights, imagining Paige's smug face. She truly believed she was going to get away with all of it. Palmer's plan was clear. He would attack my character and portray me as a jealous sister who invented the entire story. But there was one piece of evidence he could never argue against. It was the undeniable sound of Paige's voice in that video confession. I had replayed that video over and over to prepare myself for court. Every time I heard Paige yell that she wanted me to suffer, my own resolve got stronger. Tomorrow, 12 strangers would hear that same confession. They would see the journals written in her own hand. They would hear Jennifer Fisher's testimony. They would listen to Rachel Murphy describe 2 years of misery. And finally, they would hear my story about how I uncovered the truth one agonizing step at a time. My sister's whole life was on the line, a choice between 30 years in prison or walking free. The trial of Paige Sutton started on a cold Monday, December 2nd, 2024. Those 5 days felt like an entire lifetime. The courtroom was filled to capacity each day. Journalists, victim supporters, and curious Austin residents packed the benches. I sat in the front row for the prosecution, with Rachel beside me. Across the aisle, our parents, Wallace and Margaret, sat behind Paige and her lawyer. Our eyes never met. Judge Catherine Walsh was in charge, looking just as stern as she did at the first hearing. The jury was made up of 12 people. There were 7 women and 5 men, ranging in age from their early 20s to their late 60s. These everyday people now held my sister's future in their hands. The district attorney Monroe stood up to deliver her opening statement. She painted a picture of deep jealousy, careful planning, and total destruction. Paige Sutton spent 3 months framing her sister for a crime that she did not commit. Monroe argued that this was a disturbing pattern. 2 years earlier, Paige had ruined another woman's life completely. She is a predator who targets successful women because of jealousy. She feels no guilt for the lives she destroys. The evidence will prove that Paige Sutton is guilty of everything. Then her lawyer Palmer stood up, looking calm and collected. He described the situation as a family disagreement gone too far. He claimed that Reagan Sutton, a tech expert, could have faked the digital proof. He accused me of breaking into my sister's accounts. He said I made this up to escape my own legal issues. The defense only needs to create some reasonable doubt. If you have any doubt, you must find her not guilty. On the second day, I was called to the witness stand. Monroe had me explain the whole story. I talked about my arrest, the stolen license, and the journals. I was on the stand for 4 hours. Then Palmer began his cross examination. He asked, Miss Sutton, did you read your sister's private journal without permission? I corrected him. I said I used a shared family cloud account that I could legally access. He replied, How lucky that you just happened to find proof of your sister's crimes. I calmly stated the journals were in Paige's own handwriting. Digital records prove the date of each entry. I did not make any of it up. He insisted that my cybersecurity skills meant I could have changed the data. I told him I did not. He shot back. But you had the ability to do it. I looked directly at the jury. I could have, but I did not. The forensic report confirms I am telling the truth. Palmer questioned me for an entire hour, but he failed to shake my story. On day 3, Rachel had her turn to testify. She bravely told her own story. She described the setup in 2022, the stolen password, and the $85,000. She spoke of being broke and jobless for 2 terrible years. Her voice never wavered. Palmer only questioned her for 30 minutes. He could not make her crack either. Jennifer Fisher was the next person to take the stand. She appeared thinner and more quiet, but her will was strong. She talked about the car accident, the violent crash, and waking up in a hospital. Her daughter had suffered a concussion. Then she learned the crash was not an accident. I thought it was just a random event, she said. Then I discovered it was all on purpose. The goal was to hurt me because my husband is a detective. My daughter and I were just in the way. Her voice broke on the last word. 2 people on the jury quickly wiped their eyes. Day 4 was all about the confession video. Monroe stood. Your Honor, the prosecution presents Exhibit 47. It is the interview with Paige Sutton from September 19, 2024. Palmer objected right away, saying the confession was forced. Judge Walsh denied his objection. The defendant was not under arrest at the time. She was a witness, so her rights did not need to be read. The confession was allowed. The lights in the courtroom went down. A big screen at the front turned on. I saw Paige on the screen in that same interview room. The video started in the middle of our talk. My voice was calm and steady. Did you have a personal reason to go after Jennifer Fisher? Paige's voice was full of anger. I did not care if that cop's wife died. She meant nothing to me. This has always been about you. A heavy silence fell over the courtroom. A juror gasped and covered her mouth. Another juror leaned back with a look of total disgust. The video showed Paige screaming, I needed you to feel pain. I needed you to know what it is like to lose everything you love. Then she realized what she had just admitted. The blood drained from her face. No, that is not what I was trying to say. The screen went black and the courtroom lights came on. Paige looked down at the table with trembling hands. She would not look at anyone. Palmer stood up quickly to try and fix the damage. Your Honor, my client was under extreme emotional pressure. Monroe replied quickly. That confession was not forced. Miss Sutton said that all by herself. No one prompted her or threatened her. She spoke her own truth, and the jury heard it. Judge Walsh gave a small nod. You may continue. On the 5th day, it was time for the closing arguments. Monroe looked right at the jury. You have seen her journals that outlined a 90-day plan. You heard her confess that she wanted me to suffer. You have seen all the evidence. There were 2 victims, 2 different plots, but only one person responsible. Paige Sutton is guilty. She must face the consequences of her actions. Palmer then stood for his last speech. He talked about reasonable doubt. That is all it takes. Can you be 100% sure those journals were not changed? Can you be sure her confession was not manipulated? If you have any doubt, you must vote not guilty. The jury left the room at 2:15 in the afternoon. Rachel and I waited together in the hallway. The tension in the air was thick. Bradley came and leaned against the wall with us. How long do you think this will be? Rachel asked quietly. It could be hours or it could be days. I did not have an answer for her. At 6:30 that evening, an officer came out. The jury is back. They made their decision in just 4 hours. We all went back into the courtroom and took our seats. Paige was completely still, sitting between her lawyers. Wallace and Margaret looked like they had aged 10 years in only 5 days. Judge Walsh entered the room. We all stood and then sat down again. Has the jury reached a verdict? The foreman, a man in his 50s with gray hair, stood. Yes, Your Honor, we have. Regarding the charge of attempted murder of Jennifer Fisher, what is your finding? Guilty. Margaret made a small, strangled noise. The foreman kept reading from the paper. Attempted murder of Emma Fisher. Guilty. Assault with a dangerous weapon. Guilty. Felony hit and run. Guilty. Child endangerment. Guilty. Identity theft of Reagan Sutton. Guilty. Obstruction of justice. Guilty. He read through all 14 charges. Each time the word was exactly the same. Guilty, guilty, guilty. Paige's calm expression finally shattered. Her knuckles were white from gripping the table. Palmer put a hand on her shoulder, but she did not seem to notice. Judge Walsh's voice cut through the silence. Miss Sutton, you are found guilty on all counts. Sentencing is scheduled for December 20th in 2 weeks. Take the defendant into custody. Two deputies walked toward Paige. She stood up on shaky legs. They cuffed her hands behind her back. As they led her to a side door, she turned and her eyes met mine. All the fight had gone out of her. The only thing left in her eyes was a deep emptiness. Her lips started to form words. I could not hear her over the noise, but I could read her lips perfectly. I hate you. I did not respond. There was nothing left to say. The door clicked shut and she was gone. December 20th, 2024 was the day of her sentencing. The courtroom felt colder this time. Maybe it was the feeling that everything was truly over. 2 weeks had passed since the verdict. Paige sat at the table wearing an orange jumpsuit with her hands cuffed. Her expensive clothes and her confident act were gone. Gregory Palmer sat next to her, but he had no more arguments to make. Judge Catherine Walsh looked down from her bench. Before I deliver the sentence, the court will hear from the victims. Jennifer Fisher spoke first. Her voice was strong, but her hands gripped the podium. My daughter Emma is 7 years old. She still has nightmares and wakes up screaming every single night. The sound of a car horn makes her terrified. Paige Sutton did not just hit our car, she ruined our family's sense of peace and security. My husband Robert is a police detective. He deals with the worst kinds of people, but he never expected to find his own family injured in a car wreck. Paige Sutton does not deserve any mercy because she showed us none. Rachel Murphy was the next to speak. She was clearly thinner than she was 9 months before, but she stood up straight and proud. 2 years ago, Paige Sutton destroyed my career, my good name, and my family relationships. She took my entire life away from me. For 2 years, I thought it was my fault. I believed that I had made some terrible mistake. I committed no crime. My sister Paige destroyed my life because she was jealous. Your Honor, she is a danger. If you let her go, she will just hurt someone else. Then it was my time to speak. I walked to the podium and spoke to Judge Walsh, never looking at Paige. Paige is my own sister. I protected her my whole life, and in return, she tried to put me away for 10 years. This is not about me anymore. We must make sure Paige can never harm another person again. Your Honor, I am asking for the maximum penalty the law permits. Judge Walsh then turned his gaze to Paige. Miss Sutton, please stand. Paige got to her feet, her chains making a faint noise in the silent courtroom. The judge's tone was steady and harsh. I have examined every piece of evidence, every report, and all the victim statements. What you did was not just a mistake. Your actions were intentional, carefully organized, and unbelievably heartless. You wrote down your 90-day plan to ruin your sister in a diary. And before that, you destroyed Rachel Murphy's life purely out of envy. He paused for a moment. You have shown absolutely no regret. Your confession was filled with anger, not sorrow. The law provides for stronger sentences when there is a history of this kind of conduct. I will be using those provisions today. For the crime of attempted murder, you will serve 15 years for each charge, and they will be served consecutively. For the charges of fraud against Rachel Murphy, you will serve another 8 years. When added to the other charges, your full sentence is 30 years in state prison. You cannot be considered for parole for at least 15 years. Paige's knees gave out from under her. Our mother, Margaret, cried out from her seat. Wallace just sat there, completely stunned. Judge Walsh's gavel came down with a single loud bang. Bailiff removed the prisoner. 2 officers took Paige by the arms and walked her away. She never glanced back. I felt completely empty inside. Not joyful, not calm, just a profound hollowness. It was done. Fast forward 9 months to September of 2025, and my world had changed for the better. I was finally me again. I could see my own smile in the glass of my new office at Secure Net Solutions. I was the new director of cybersecurity, making $230,000 a year, a big jump from $178,000. I took my $52,000 bonus from last year and did two things. I created a $100,000 fund for Emma Fisher's college and counseling. I also paid off $214,000 of Jennifer Fisher's medical bills. The card she sent me is on my desk. It says I saved her family 2 times, once from Paige and again from debt. Nearby, Rachel Murphy has her own workspace. I hired her 6 months back as our lead event planner, and her name has been cleared. The prosecutor officially erased her record right after Paige was sentenced. Rachel now has $25,000 in savings. She got a new place in South Congress and is rebuilding things with her family. Last week, they made her the lead event strategist. She used to think her career was finished. I made it clear that she deserved all of her new accomplishments. Jennifer and Emma are getting better. Jennifer is back at her job at the Children's Hospital. Emma goes to counseling 2 times a week and her bad dreams are fading. She is in second grade, has made new friends, and is much happier. Robert Fisher called me 3 months back just to say thank you. I just told him I was glad his family was all right. He was certain it was all because of me. Wallace and Margaret admitted to their crime of blocking the investigation. They got 2 years of probation, community work, and paid $80,000 fines each. Their big house in Westlake went for $3.1 million. After paying over $600,000 for lawyers, they live in a little condo now. I see them on Thanksgiving each year. Our visits are always awkward, civil, but cold. We do not talk about Paige. She is in a prison for women about a 2 hour drive away. A letter came from her 4 months ago with only a few sentences. It said, I am sorry. I was mistaken. The last sentence asked me to respond. I tossed the letter in the trash. I did not feel any anger for her. I just felt nothing, which feels far worse. Today, I am at a coffee shop with Rachel on 2nd Street. The September sun is shining through the glass. Rachel is so happy about becoming the senior event strategist. I told her she earned it completely. She reached over the table, took my hand, and gave it a soft squeeze. She said she never properly thanked me for believing in her and helping her start over. I replied that we saved one another. We lifted our cups in a small toast. Rachel's phone buzzed with a meeting alert for 20 minutes from now. I told her she should go and that I would handle the check. She hugged me and suggested dinner soon, and I said yes. I stayed a while, just looking out at the city of Austin. Just 1 year ago, I was accused of a crime I did not commit. My sister tried to destroy me, but she forgot something important. My name is Reagan Sutton. Solving problems is what I do, and my own family was the toughest problem I ever solved. My phone buzzed. It was a message from a new client. A company in Dallas had a security problem. I left some money on the table and walked into the lovely afternoon. I was finally free. I was free from the legal case and from family who did not love me. For the very first time, I felt I was in the right place. To all of you listening, I want you to hear this. I was lucky to have the ability to find the truth, the strength to defend myself, and the courage to choose what was right over blood. I could have given up 3 different times. The first was when I discovered the journal. The second was when I witnessed Rachel's deep suffering. And the third time was seeing her confession video play in the courtroom. Yet I kept going because some fights you just have to win. Looking back, I do not feel bad about exposing what Paige did. I only wish I had seen the warning signs earlier. Her jealousy was always there, hidden under her ambition. She never owned up to any of her mistakes. Betrayal from family is not like a movie scene. It grows quietly, looking like friendly competition. Then one day you are being arrested because your own sister framed you. I want you to learn from my experience. Do not wait until you are wrongly accused to see that sabotage from family is not a story. It is a real thing that can destroy you. So please take my advice. Always listen to your gut feeling. If someone in your family makes you feel small, jealous, or scared, you must set a boundary to protect yourself no matter who they are. When someone you love turns on you, it is the deepest pain. They know your secrets, your habits, and your weaknesses. If they use that knowledge against you, recovery might be impossible. I almost did not make it back. This whole thing showed me that being related does not equal loyalty. It showed that the ones you love most could be planning to hurt you. So, if this story has touched you in some way, I would be happy to see your comments. Has a person you trusted ever betrayed you completely? Please share this with anyone you think should hear it, and I would be grateful if you subscribed. My future stories will look even deeper into the darkness that can exist inside people. Thank you for listening all the way through. I also want to say that these stories might include made-up details to better illustrate a point. If this is not the kind of content you enjoy, feel free to browse my other videos. Please be well and stay safe. Model.